This 7:04 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of the Village Board to order. Clerk Waters, would you please take the roll?
Trustee Eater?
Here.
Trustee Enya? Trustee Leving-Jacobson?
Here.
Trustee Straw?
Here.
Trustee Taglia?
Present.
Trustee Wesley?
Here.
President Skaman?
Here. Okay, so we do have a quorum, and Trustee Leving-Jacobson is participating according to our protocols. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Are we looking to table items K and L?
I'm good with it, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see the last in my email there.
Okay.
So I'd entertain to approve the agenda as it's been presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Eater, seconded by Trustee Wesley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, agenda's been approved. Minutes, entertain a motion to approve minutes from the March 24th, 2026 regular meeting of the Village Board. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Wesley, seconded by Trustee Eater. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any? Oh, we have one non-agenda public comment. Michael Gibbs. Hello, Michael. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Michael Gibbs, 527 Monroe River Forest. To the Village Board, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you again tonight and for your service to the residents of Oak Park. 2 months ago, I spoke to you about a hit-and-run accident that involved my 22-year-old daughter on December 20th. The only comment from that board meeting at the time was the village president asking the village manager to follow up on this issue. He did not. 4 months have passed. I have heard nothing. The Oak Park Police have lived up to the warnings that I received and done nothing that I know of. No citations have been issued to the repeat no insurance offender that lives all the way in Melrose Park. Funny side note, I got a parking ticket recently that warned that a warrant for my arrest would be issued if I didn't pay the parking ticket. What has happened with me over the last 4 months? State Farm paid a $4,500 claim for the damage to my car and will not renew my daughter's coverage on account of the claim. I am out of pocket $500 for the deductible. Due to the lack of concern by the Oak Park Police, I took it upon myself to notify the Secretary of State Police that Oak Park's lack of filing required state notifications regarding non-insured motorists. At the recommendation of the state police, they suggested I also contact the Illinois Department of Transportation regarding Oak Park's failure to notify the state of the non-insured motorist hit and run. That I did. As I said 2 months ago, multiple crimes have been committed. $5,000 in property damage in the hit and run, driving without insurance for a second occasion. I want justice. I want to sign a complaint against the owner of the vehicle. I want my day in court. I want the village of Oak Park to do their job. Which of you here tonight is going to do their jobs? When I served as trustee in River Forest for 8 years, every meeting had the police chief, the fire chief, the director of public works. I would rather direct these comments to someone in a police uniform than to the elected officials. So for that, I apologize that you're getting my wrath. I paid my parking ticket. I'm a responsible member of society that expects laws to be enforced, all of them. I expect a response. Here's the parking light and the license plate of the car that hit me. Go at it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I trust we'll follow up.
Oh, absolutely. We will prepare a comprehensive response. I'm already in touch with the police chief to make sure we get your response on what's actually happening here, at least so you can have the full perspective of the village staff.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right. Do we have any other non-agenda public comment? Lynn Pelgrim, or go please. Oh, yeah, you're welcome to join us at the microphone so that those on Zoom can hear. I appreciate it.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Kristen Matthews. I live at 1141 South Scoville in Oak Park. My husband and I have lived here since 2014. I'm here because in February, most homes on our block received notice that our water service lines, which most of them are lead, will be replaced this summer, and the village will be charging us $7,500 to do so. This is a very high cost that is being handed to homeowners on a really short notice. Our block learned about this in February. This work has to be done as soon as June, and we have to either decide if we're going to pay the village $7,500 or if we're going to pay a contractor. I believe the village should prioritize using our already plentiful tax dollars and other grants to ensure that our water is safe. This current approach is just not affordable for residents. Oak Park has, the best that Oak Park has offered is potentially, and it hasn't even been approved yet by this group, a low interest loan, which is going to be a burden. It's going to be more than $100 a month additional on our water bill for 6 or 7 years. We're all facing rising costs. While my family would be able to shoulder this burden, I think others in Oak Park would find it much more difficult. Other towns, as my neighbor will share, are doing more to help. Cicero, Elmwood Park, River Forest, and even Chicago are covering all or at least a portion of the cost for their residents. Across the country, cities like Denver have fully covered the cost in the interest of public health. This is an important public health issue. None of us want lead in our water. However, this came as a surprise. While Public Works has been very responsive and kind in answering our questions, awareness about this is low, not just on my block, but all throughout Oak Park. I understand that the official plan is due a year from now in April of 2027, but now we're being caught in limbo, and it feels kind of on the down low that we're just asking people for $7,500. So what I'm asking is for, first, if this is being done on an emergency basis on my block and other blocks, there's others here on the north side of Oak Park who are being affected this summer, that the village help us cover the cost. Secondly, I think it's time for transparency. The village is clearly able to mount an effective awareness campaign, as it did for the pool referendum. Let's be transparent with residents about what the plans are for the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and how it will affect our streets and homes. Everyone needs to understand how they're affected. I've answered at least 25 questions on Facebook. Does this affect my home? Look here at this map. The village really needs to be doing more to let people know that we've moved from what really felt like an educational phase where we were getting flyers about you may have lead in your water to what's essentially an invoice for this summer. So I'm really urging the village to reconsider handing that cost to us for this summer to do more to help us, as you have, I believe, other blocks in the village, and just to be more transparent about what will happen for all of us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
It's not mandatory, is it?
Good evening. I'm Lynn Palmgren, President Skaman, Honorable Trustees. Thank you for what you do. I am here as a neighbor of Chrissy, and I also live on the 1100 block of Scoville Avenue. I'm also a small business owner in Oak Park. And I'd like to talk to you about the lead water pipes being replaced in Oak Park. As Chrissy talked about, in February, we received this letter from the village that said, we have lead pipes and we're going to be replacing them this summer. In this letter, it outlined that the cost of it would be $7,500 to $12,000 per household, and that this bill would be paid by the residents to cover the residential portion of those lead pipes. I'm sure you can imagine my sticker shock of getting an unexpected bill of thousands of dollars to be owed in such a short amount of time with absolutely no previous notice. To give you an idea of what the surrounding suburbs are doing, the following towns are paying 100% of the cost to replace lead pipes, including Riverside, Forest Park, Cicero, Berwyn, and Elmwood Park. That means zero cost to the residents. And our neighbors in River Forest, they're paying 50% of the costs. In the city of Chicago, if you meet income requirements, they're paying 100%. This is an embarrassment. How did we get shown up by other suburbs? If they found a way to pay for the lead pipe replacement, why can't we? Oak Park has spent so much money on making bikes friendly, making a bike-friendly community. And bike plans are very important, don't get me wrong. But I can choose not to ride a bike, but I cannot choose to not drink water. Requiring the residents to pay this bill places a very heavy financial burden on us, especially in this economy. But the good news is it's not too late. Postponing this project and finding outside sources, either from the federal government or the state government, or even moving money around, is still an option. I ask you to find a way to cover this expense, to cover the residents' pipes replacement, either in whole or in part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monique Matthews. Good evening, everyone. I agree with both of the residents, the owners. The young lady says she would like you to pay it in whole or portion, but I believe you guys should pay it in whole. If you guys don't mind, can I open a prayer?
Well, I'm not going to participate. But
You say what?
I'm not going to forbid you, but I'm not going to participate.
Okay. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you today, Lord, and we pray that you will open our hearts and our minds, that you may get the glory of this day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I have two scriptures that, and it's confirmed. I want to look at the NIV from the first gentleman about his daughter was hit in a car. I was rushing here, but we're going to get through this. We are going to get through this. I only want to talk to Vicky.
President Skaman, yes.
Is it scam or scan?
President Skaman.
Oh, scamming. Okay, why does I keep saying scam? Okay, sorry about that. I'm coming from Psalms chapter 10, verse 8. It says, he sits in the lurking places of the village. In secret places, he murdered the innocents. That's in the New Testament. I'm going somewhere with this. If you look at the NIV, it says, he lies in wait near the village from ambush. He murdered the innocents. His eyes watch in secret for his victims. Like a lion covered, he lies in wait. He lies in wait. Hi, Kevin Jackson. I know we all work together, right? As a team, we should, right? As members. So I think we should do a re-election. I remember back in 2004 where you can keep your car doors open. You can even fall asleep in your car or leave your phone out on the block. I remember this. We're in 2026. 2021, everything began to shrink, everything. So I want to know where's the funds going. So I think we need to go back to find out where's the money going. That's what I think we need to do. I think we all need to find out where is the money being put. We probably also need to check phone records and see conversations that's going on, not just in the village, but on the personal lines, to find out where all the money is going. What's happening is we're getting more crimes. Oak Park was a place where it was built with architect, it was built with the schools that safe. Everything have just turned into a mess. And it looked like within, I'm not even gonna say 5 years, it's like it's gonna be a war if we don't get and re-elect. That's what we need to do. We need to do a re-election. Can you guys acknowledge that?
Sorry, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other non-agenda public comment this evening? Village Manager Jackson, we're mentioning we're going to be talking more about the lead line discussion at May meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, President Scammon, for allowing me the opportunity to preview what we're going to be talking about on May 5th. We're going to be seeking additional board direction on the lead line replacement plan. It's an opportunity to clarify state and federal requirements, what are requirements for the village, what are requirements for residents. We think those clarifications will be helpful to the residents and also to the village board in terms of providing us direction. We'll also be providing information on kind of, sort of the makeup of our community and the more than 9,000 lead lines that we have in this community, which makes us a little bit different than a lot of communities in terms of the burden and the cost that come with the lead line replacement program. We're going to be talking about potential opportunities for resources to support residents in the process as well, and really trying to paint a realistic picture about what the village can and cannot do to help the board. We envision that from that discussion, there will be a series of finance committee meetings where the finance committee will have an opportunity to provide additional support to the village staff in defining how we should proceed with the lead line replacement program. And duly noted, we think it is important for us to be doing public education, a lot of additional public education upon getting some preliminary direction from the village board based upon our what we know about the requirements now. There are some new requirements that have just come at the federal level, some different things that are happening at the state that'll help kind of shape the perspective for the village board to give us clear direction on how we want to move forward.
Okay, but the construction here is starting this summer, right? But that's our very next meeting, so we'll discuss it more thoroughly at that very next meeting.
Yes.
Because I can definitely understand how getting that letter with the quick turnaround might be challenging for all of us.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there are things that residents aren't required to do that we can't really speak to right now based upon state law, and we hope to clarify some of that as part of the conversation on May 5th.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming in and for highlighting this. We'll look forward to further conversation. Thank you. And so if there's no other non-agenda public comment, then we have a proclamation. I'd entertain a motion to approve a proclamation celebrating 70 years of Oak-Leyden. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Trustee Straw, seconded by Trustee Wesley. And do we have Oak-Leyden with us this evening? Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Sorry. And Lori, too. Thank you for all your coordinating. And thank you, Trustee Wesley, for reading this for us.
Of course. Recognizing the 70th anniversary of Oak-Leyden, whereas Oak-Leyden has provided comprehensive quality programs and services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities since 1956, and whereas Oak-Leyden offers an extensive range of services and programs for children who demonstrate a delay in one or more areas of development, and whereas Oak-Leyden's adult services programs empower participants to build confidence, develop new skills, and integrate with the broader community. And whereas Oak-Leyden's Community Living Services program operates 12 residential community homes for residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And whereas Oak-Leyden's Lifelong Learning program provides adults with developmental disabilities a curriculum of vital skills tailored to their needs and ability levels. And whereas Oak-Leyden provides resources and relevant information about developmental disabilities to parents, guardians, and members of the community. And whereas Oak-Leyden is committed to collaborating with all providers of services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to find the most viable solutions to these issues. And now, therefore, I, Corey Wesley, on behalf of Vicki Skaman, President of the Village of Oak Park and the Board of Trustees, do hereby recognize the 70th anniversary of Oak-Leyden and its vital contributions to our community, dated this 21st day of April 2026.
Thank you. Do you want to come up and share a little bit about your upcoming event and anniversary? Thank you so much for joining us and for all you do in our community.
Thank you. Thank you for that proclamation. It's really meaningful to us, and I'd like to recognize RJ McMahon, our CEO, and Lori, who's on our development committee, and really appreciate the support of the community, support of Oak Park. The team and the staff of Oak-Leyden are very passionate about what they do and helping other, IDD community. And so we just really appreciate what you're doing. This Thursday evening at Riverside Country Club, we're hosting the 70th anniversary event. It's called the Mighty Oak. It's going to be a great event, a great night, raise funds for Oak-Leyden. It's going to support this mission that Oak-Leyden has to help people in the community that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for the proclamation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I think we'll take a quick photo, if that's all good. Laura, do you want to join us? And go ahead, Corey.
No,
Oh, everybody? You want everybody?
yeah, you're the boss.
And so people, can they possibly still purchase tickets, or is that too late?
They can purchase tickets. We have, I've got some in my car. Actually.
Got a couple in my car.
Thanks, Corey, board member.
Or you could go online and donate.
Yeah, there's a website, oakleyden.org.
Yeah, no, we have to go this way. Yeah, front of the,
Thank you so much.
Put you in the middle. Lori? How you doing? Okay, we got you. Okay? How do we look, Jeff?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you, Corey. What's that?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone who's able to go to please support. I typically am there, but I'll be on an airplane to Berkeley, where I'm being appointed to the ICLEI USA Board. Looking forward to that, too. I would thank you for your service on the Oak-Leyden Board.
one of the many jobs I seem to have around this village.
Yes, yes. But you've been on the board for a couple of years now, right?
Since 2020, I think. Yeah, 2020.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. And so we do have two other proclamations. I'd entertain a motion to approve a proclamation for Earth Month 2026 and for Arbor Day, April 24th of 2026. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'd like to note that in, is it the Arbor Day we also have, or is it the Earth Day? Earth Month, there's a participation in the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And so we're thrilled to be continuing that support and partnership in learning for Monarch Butterfly Month. or that pledge. So, thank you very much for bringing forward both of those proclamations for us. Are there Earth Month activities to share, or?
There are Earth Month activities to share. So first of all, happy Earth Day Eve. Tomorrow at the conservatory, we will be having the Oak Park Earth Fest. This will be from 4 to 6 p.m. in partnership with the Park District. On Thursday evening, I will be moderating a panel at the Oak Park River Forest Museum on historic preservation and sustainability. And then on Friday, we're partnering with the library and the Oak Park River Forest High School to be a host site for the One Earth Film Festival, and we'll be showing the film How to Power a City. Doors open at 5:45. The program starts at 6:30.
Great. Will Thursday night be recorded?
No.
Oh, bummer. Sorry. Can we still make that happen? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciated. I did do all in favor, right? Okay, so Village Manager's report. Village Manager Jackson.
Yes, thank you, President Skaman. For the report tonight, we have updated calendars for May, June, and July. And if there are any questions about any of the items on the calendars, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, so I do have one or two comments. I know that we're still working to move June 2nd, if that's at all possible. And then
I'll be
a
otherwise
note to my
occupied that day.
colleagues. Yes. A note to my colleagues that we are working to find dates for Reimagining Government committee as well. So please stay tuned on that. Okay?
Yeah, and if we have a confirmation tonight on the interest in vacating the June 2nd meeting, that would be helpful. I think we have some alternatives for the items that are scheduled for June 2nd.
Yeah, that's the preferred.
I'll be in the midst of a 2-week trial, and so it'd be preferable to not have the meeting that night. I'm certainly on board with that.
Thank you. Very good. Any other comments from my colleagues on the calendar? All right. I guess as long as we're getting into it, Trustee Enya, you're up on July 21st as President Pro Tem. So if you have any travel engagements, please let me know.
I'll be out on the 12th of May.
12th of May? Okay. We'll make sure that we then connect before that meeting. All right.
I won't be here the 5th of May.
Okay. Well, this is productive. Anyone else? All right. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Now, Village Board committees. Does anyone have any updates on Village Board committees?
I was at the Building Codes Advisory Commission on Thursday, my old commission, and I'm the liaison there. Yeah, we welcomed a new member to the commission, and we also talked about potentially applying for the grant from the Illinois Climate Bank for the Energy Stretch Code adoption grant funding. So, yeah, we'll be continuing to pursue that.
Okay, very good. So I would like to follow up on where we might stand on that thought, Village Manager Jackson. So, any other committee reports?
We had an iGov meeting Saturday, and the discussion is about what the forum would look like coming up perhaps later this year. And the discussion was around what it means to have each taxing body, when they have a referendum or a referenda item, how they differ and what they mean and what's effective and what's binding and not binding, because there's a lot of misinformation about what that's about. And I think that's going to be useful to the community. So that's coming up later this year, in the fall, I think.
All right, great. I did hear some the suggestion of maybe even an op-ed in the Wednesday Journal if IGov was interested in looking at that idea. Any other comments?
The Civic Information Systems Commission, which I am the liaison and former member, is brainstorming a Day in Our Data, which is a Oak Park Civic Hackathon. So the idea is to get together a bunch of open data sources related to local, state, federal governments, bring them together and figure out how they can put that data to use and build pretty cool projects out of it. So they're looking for feedback. They're looking for ideas. They're looking for people to show up and be supportive and maybe even participate. AI makes that a little bit easier than it would have about a year ago. So if you do have anything, feel free to reach out to me or the board, or yeah, those two are probably the best.
Right, which is Trustee Wesley at oak-park.us.
Oh, trust me, they know.
Oh, that does sound like fun, though. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I would be lost, but that's all right. That's why we have you and Derek. And the commission. Yeah?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for hackathons. Like, one of the first things that got me into civics was doing like open data applications, and that's started me on this path. So
Nice.
let's get the high school involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a great idea.
Fantastic. Okay, and anyone else? Well, I do know that a couple of us are involved in a civics fair at Julian or Gwendolyn Brooks in the next couple of days, right? Myself, our attorney, Greg Smith, and Chief Trustee Enya, right? Okay, so I just hope we're not all doing the same thing. But I think we're good. Yeah, so that's, oh, and our fire chief is also participating. And Chief Johnson at Brooks. So we all get a session to talk about our roles and excite young people and opportunities for different careers. So looking forward to that. Thank you. Okay, and I think also the collaboration for early childhood, we do expect to hear from them in the next coming months, reviewing a long-standing agreement, just with some updates to match today's reality and how we operate for our colleagues to consider approval of. And we may also, we're very likely to see an increase, a need for increase, or discuss an increase for funding, as we have not increased our funding to the collaboration since 2012. But that would be upon further analysis. Okay? All right, so we'll look forward to more information on that. And Derek and Village Manager Jackson serve with me on that IGA work group. Okay, so we do have our board and commission vacancy report. And so anyone interested in serving on one of our boards or commissions, you can email the clerk at oak-park.us. And so I'd entertain a motion to consent to my appointments of, and Clerk Waters, do you want to share the names of our volunteers?
Sure. That's John Michelotti, reappoint as Commissioner to the Building Codes Advisory Commission. Darryl Baker, appoint as Chair to the Environment and Energy Commission. Macaire Ament, reappoint as Commissioner to the Farmers Market Commission. Amy Peterson, reappoint as Commissioner to the Historic Preservation Commission. Michael Denton, reappoint as member to the Housing Programs Advisory Committee. And finally, Jason Jenkins, reappoint as Commissioner to the Transportation Commission.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we show our appreciation to all of the volunteers on our many boards and commissions. Clerk Waters?
Was there a motion?
Yeah, help me. Who did the motion in second? No? Oh, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that was Trustee Eater and Trustee Wesley. Thank you. And moving to consent agenda, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's been presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by trustee Eater, seconded by trustee Wesley. Clerk Waters, would you please take the roll?
Trustee Eater,
Yes.
Trustee Wesley,
Yes.
Trustee Enya,
Yes.
Trustee Levin Jacobson,
Yes.
Trustee Straw,
Yes.
Trustee Taglia,
Yes.
President Skaman.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, for the regular agenda, so the consent agenda has been approved. And we have a presentation discussion of the Village of Oak Park's electric shuttle feasibility assessment. Village Manager Jackson.
Yes, President Skaman, trustee members, thank you. Chief Sustainability Officer Lindsay Rowland-Naraka, she's going to explain how we got here and introduce this item. And then I know we have a guest who's going to actually present the report. Lindsay.
Great, thank you, Manager Jackson. Good evening again. Lindsay Rowland-Narodka, Chief Sustainability Officer. So the Climate Ready Oak Park Plan includes an action VT04, which says to conduct a feasibility assessment of reintroducing the Oak Park Shuttle with an all-electric fleet. So the report in front of you tonight is the result of that analysis. Staff and consultants evaluated how an electric shuttle could meet multiple village goals. Goals included reducing greenhouse gas emissions by reducing vehicle miles traveled, increasing economic vitality to our business districts, and increasing equity by improving mobility and transit access. These goals were evaluated through analyzing current travel patterns and transit systems, engaging with stakeholders, and engaging with potential users through surveys, focus groups, and other interactions. So the report in front of you and that you're going to hear more about tonight is a high-level evaluation of potential models for the board to consider. Staff are requesting the board provide us with guidance on the type of service that you would like us to possibly pursue in more detail. Tonight, we are recommending that the board provide us that input on your preferred service and then direct us to seek out grant opportunities and partnerships with transit agencies before we bring back to you sometime in the future more specific cost details and operating impacts. The agenda summary that you have includes some other alternatives as well. So for this study, we had the pleasure of working with T.Y. Lin, who will present the results to you in a moment. Again, the study is high level and intended to provide the board with more information on the travel behaviors in the village, transit gaps, and several potential service option models based on these data and the input of stakeholders in the community. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael Grove from T.Y. Lin.
Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank you to Lindsay and the entire team at the Village for all of the leadership going through this project. As Lindsay mentioned, my name is Michael Groh. I am with T.Y. Lin Consulting. So we have a brief presentation. I'll try to keep it brief, but of course, if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to get into more detail on this. So we'll start with some project background. As Lindsay mentioned, the Climate Ready Oak Park study included a recommendation to conduct a feasibility analysis of reintroducing the Oak Park Shuttle with an all-electric fleet. And so that's the origin of this study. Of course, there's the history of the previous village shuttle that operated in the 2000s. There's also the public survey that the village launched in 2024 to gather information from residents about potential interest in a survey. And then following that survey, our consultant study started in 2025. So we have an overview of the previous Oak Park Shuttle. You can see in the map on the right the routing that the service followed through the village. This service used a 10-passenger bus and also 2 6-passenger vans that were provided through the PACE community vehicle program. It operated every 30 minutes, and it operated from 10 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. on all days. And there were some adjustments in the summertime as well. And if you look at the map, you can see the path that the service operated through the village. It kind of had one large loop and 3 smaller loops. It's certainly not the most direct service, but it did cover a number of destinations. It was canceled in 2007 or I'm sorry, it was canceled in 2008, but we have a ridership statistic from 2007 that it had 66 daily riders. And some of the feedback that we gathered in our effort on the kind of the challenges with the previous shuttle were the indirect routing that it followed, which created relatively slow trips for some customers. The vehicles were considered not the most comfortable for riders. And it was also, we heard that there were unhoused residents or unhoused persons using the vehicles for shelter. So next we'll look at the goals and purpose of this study. And so the village has a number of different priorities and objectives that are kind of aspired to address with the shuttle. And so we'll run through these briefly. First, there's addressing gaps in the existing transit network. We know that the village kind of has a place at the it's situated at the intersection of multiple transit agencies, and that can create some coordination challenges. We also know that there's interest in expanding access to the business districts and key commercial corridors using the shuttle for economic development. We know that seniors and persons with disabilities are an important part of the constituency for potential shuttle service, and providing improved access for those groups. There are also a number of other popular destinations that arose as potentially needing improved access, including downtown Oak Park, the Harrison Street Arts District, and a number of other local cultural institutions, the high schools, and other transit hubs. In addition, there's congestion issues that we are hoping to address, and parking demand issues to address. And then finally, supporting sustainable transportation and mode shift to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce vehicle miles traveled, et cetera. And so it's kind of it's a lot of different objectives to complete. And I think one of the kind of central challenges in the study is trying to understand how to balance these objectives. So when we're planning a shuttle service, we can often accomplish one or two or maybe three of these, but kind of being able to accomplish every single one is challenging. So there's certainly an important question of priorities here. Next, the study examined the existing conditions and the transit markets in the village. So this task involved a review of demographics, transportation conditions, and specifically the public transit network. So demographics, we studied the population densities, the business district patterns, poverty rates, minority populations, populations aged over 60, populations with disability. On the transportation side, we looked at origin-destination patterns, employment locations, transit modes that are being used, what time of day people travel. And then finally, in public transit, we looked at the existing network structure, the service frequency, hours of service, et cetera, to understand how things are working. So this slide summarizes some of the key findings. The population and jobs are certainly concentrated downtown, as well as along the Madison and Lake Street corridors. The travel flow data indicate a lot of short distance trips, especially around Central Oak Park. The highest transit usage is on the CTA and Metro rail lines. Also, overall, the transit ridership is highest during the peak hours. Nothing terribly surprising. And finally, that some of the interagency transfers can be challenging. We also identified some gaps to potentially address. So one of those was the off-peak and weekend transit service. When demand is lower, the frequencies are also lower, which can create more challenging transit travel. We found that east-west travel across Oak Park can be limited. For example, there are 4 different CTA bus routes that end right at the village boundary at Austin Boulevard. So that's, there's some valid reasons for that, but it also creates a kind of a disconnect in the network. The north-south travel can force transfers between the CTA and PACE bus routes for cross-village trips. That can be a challenge. And finally, just the high level of auto ownership and use can just limit the market sometimes. So with that as context, we developed a number of shuttle concepts. So this was an iterative process working with village staff and also with a number of stakeholders. There was an engagement task, stakeholder public engagement that we'll get to a little bit later. But the service options are as follows. So option A is shown on the map on the right of the slide. This operates kind of generally in a north-south pattern, but I think it kind of it functions to kind of connect the diagonals that are not served by direct north-south routes or east-west routes in the existing transit network. So it connects residents in the northeast of the village to downtown and kind of central destinations, and then it continues to the southeast and also connects those residential areas. So the key streets that it operates on are Ridgeland, Lake, and Harrison. You can see details about the span of service and the frequency of service. We estimate that, so this would be running fairly frequent service every 15 minutes during the peak times of day and every 30 minutes during the off-peak times. And the estimated cost of this is about $3.2 million annually. The benefits of this concept include that it has bidirectional service on some of these main cores of the route, and it connects a number of top destinations across the village, again in that diagonal pattern that's not served by existing PACE and CTA routes. And it serves destinations such as the schools, libraries, business districts, and other transit connections. Some of the drawbacks, while it's a more direct route than the previous shuttle, it's still not the most direct. It has a lot of turns that make service somewhat slower, and it does have limited connections with the bus routes that end at the village boundary. So when we discussed this with the village staff, there was some discussion that it might be valuable to reduce this cost. Obviously, $3.2 million is significant, so we did generate a version of kind of an alternate version of option A that has a reduced schedule in order to save some money. So this version of the service, and actually, I'm sorry, there's an error on this slide, but the span is slightly reduced, and also the frequency is reduced so that it would run every 20 minutes during the peak and every 40 minutes during the off-peak. So a somewhat less convenient service, but of course there's a significant cost savings. And of course, it has the same benefits and drawbacks associated with the previous slide. Next, we have option B. So this is a new route alignment that kind of makes a plus shape, serving different parts of the village. Some of the key streets include Austin, Madison, Lombard, Fillmore, East, Home, Lake, and Augusta. It has a similar span and frequency to the first option we looked at, so it would run every 15 minutes during the peak and every 30 minutes during off-peak. But it's a more expensive service because it has essentially just a longer amount of routing to operate, and so it needs more vehicles to operate that. So you can see the cost is estimated at $4.6 million annually. And of course, we should note that we'll talk about different funding sources that could help offset these costs. But some of the benefits of the concept include filling some of the transit gaps. So this service does get to, yes, the service does connect with the CTA routes ending at Austin. It serves the downtown and some key destinations, and it provides bidirectional service throughout the routing. Some of the downsides of this concept, it does not reach the kind of the furthest northern parts of the village, and it's in operating a circular pattern. It's not the most direct, although it's still probably an improvement from the previous version, from the 2000s route. And then finally, our third shuttle service concept is a different service model entirely. So this would be an on-demand service zone that would match the village boundaries. And so an on-demand service is It's kind of similar to an Uber service, but also a little bit different in that it's a shared ride. And this, if you're familiar with PACE's on-demand zones or some of the micro-transit services that are operated in other communities, this may be familiar. But essentially, users would request a ride typically using an app, a smartphone app, and then the vehicle would be routed to come and serve their request. And different policies can be put in place in terms of response times, and in terms of where the vehicle will serve them. But this is kind of assuming a fairly simple model where the vehicle will operate any location within the village. So we have information about the span of service here. We assumed a average wait time policy of 15 minutes. There's different policies that could be put in place for that. But it is kind of an important choice because that policy will kind of guide the development of the service, and if you need to add vehicles or so forth in order to meet demand. So we estimate that this type of service would start with about 4 vehicles, but it is a more uncertain model than a fixed route service in that the demand is essentially that these vehicles have lower capacity because they're serving fewer riders at a time, and so if additional demand comes onto the system, you'll need to increase the fleet to keep up with it. So that creates a bit of unpredictability, or also a bit of challenge with scaling. So some of the benefits of this concept is that it does allow people to go anywhere within the village, and it does facilitate travel for individuals with mobility issues. The drawbacks would include the capacity concerns that I was mentioning. The wait times, I mentioned we would have wait time policies most likely, but in practice, wait times will depend on how many vehicles are available, so there's a challenge to balance that. And it's also been discussed in our process that there is the existing township on-demand service. Some of the stakeholders mentioned it as a kind of similar model. However, there may be some similarities, but there's also a lot of differences that the township service is in serving specific populations based on disability or age, and it also does not offer same-day reservations, which the on-demand service would. So there's an interesting comparison there, but not exactly the same. Okay, so that brings us to the overall comparison of these options. This may be a little bit small on the screen, so apologies for that. But this table summarizes some of the key performance indicators that we looked at for these service concepts. So we look at the service model, what frequency or wait time is assumed, how productive we expect the service to be in terms of ridership, what operating cost is expected, and a number of other pieces of information to help you compare these options. Okay, so next I'll give an overview of the community engagement that was done as part of this process. So we had a sub-consultant, Muse Community and Design, who led stakeholder interviews and focus groups as part of the study. In addition, the village themselves led a couple efforts, including the survey of potential shuttle interest, meetings with the Business Advisory Council, the Transportation Advisory Commission, and the Environment and Energy Commission. So I'll focus my summary here on the work that was completed as part of this study. So the stakeholder interviews and the focus groups. So the stakeholder interviews included participants from the business community, some partner community institutions, accessibility, DEI, public health, transit agencies, and infrastructure, maintenance, and operation staff. And then the focus groups included a number of residents, longstanding residents, renters, homeowners, parents, a range of ages, and a number of other kind of different categories that we wanted to understand and represent in the process. So first, we have a couple of statistics from the 2024 survey. The village conducted this survey in 2024. They captured about 200 responses from different groups. And some of the key takeaways are shown on this slide. There's wide agreement that the shuttle could be a valuable asset for a community, but there was also some relatively high expectations for what the shuttle could do. 81% of the respondents weren't willing to wait more than 10 minutes, so that might be a challenge, for example. And some other indicators are shown on this slide. In addition, we have the stakeholder interviews. So some of the key takeaways from this, and these are from multiple different interviews, but from our discussions with DPW, we learned that their garage is currently at capacity, so it would likely be challenging for new shuttle vehicles to be stored there, although certainly another site could conceivably be identified. In our discussions with the transit agency partners, it was emphasized that we ought to avoid duplicating any existing transit services. Let's see. Also, in our discussions with the transit agency partners, it was understood that their existing electric vehicles are fairly limited and they wouldn't really be available for contract services. Let's see. We also had a number of discussions regarding EV shuttle use cases, which are summarized below. I think the middle and high school users were a group that came up a number of times. There's some discussion about kind of the different patterns of those users and working part-time jobs downtown and needing to travel at certain times to accommodate that. And then additionally, there are discussions with the business districts about other potential opportunities, such as connecting with the farmers market and other special events and festivals. Okay, and then the final piece of the engagement that we wanted to highlight was the focus groups. And so a couple of the key takeaways from the focus groups. Of course, we heard that traffic and parking are challenges to address. We heard that families with children have special challenges to address in terms of transportation to and from school. I think the graphic on the bottom right of the slide is an interesting one. We kind of presented a trade-off of whether people would rather have a direct service that they have to walk a little bit to access, or a less direct service that they don't have to walk. And the overwhelming result was that people actually prefer to have a less direct service, which is a little bit counterintuitive. But I think in this case it makes a lot of sense because you already have a lot of direct service in the village along your major corridors. And it's the role of a new shuttle would potentially be to fill the gaps that are outside of those major corridors. Let's see. And there's also some interesting discussion from the focus groups about the trade-offs between a fixed route service and a on-demand service. On one hand, there was a preference for the predictability that comes with a fixed route scheduled service, and I think some level of concern about having a service that is not scheduled and instead operates on a on-demand and kind of a different pattern every day. But on the other hand, there was also feedback that the not having to walk to a stop would be a positive for an on-demand service. Okay, other feedback dealt with some of the specifics of routing. So we heard early concepts included routing along Austin Boulevard, and there was some concern that the traffic along Austin could slow down service and be a negative. There's also some discussion along similar lines along Harlem Avenue, although along Harlem there's different transit connections to make. And again, the student transportation issue came up in these focus groups as well. So just to keep moving, our last section deals with implementation considerations. So our team conducted a review of different EV technology options. And in the report, you'll see details about vehicle sizes, battery capacities, and estimated ranges, and other considerations that would kind of determine the village's requirements for a vehicle. And we wanted to highlight one example that was discussed a lot was there are replica trolley designs that are electric vehicles that might help to make a more appealing and identifiable vehicle for the shuttle. Let's see. We also discussed, as part of implementation considerations, the ownership and contracting model. So we kind of break this apart in terms of who owns the vehicles, who hires the drivers, where are the vehicles stored, who's maintaining the vehicles, and we then compare these against whether it's a village-operated model, whether it's a partnership with PACE or CTA in a different form, or whether it's a kind of a third-party private operator. So I won't go into all of these details because there are some complicated trade-offs, but you have some options there once you get to implementation. And we also reviewed options regarding fare policy and potential revenue options for the shuttle. So the shuttle could be free to all users. That would have some pros and cons. In certain scenarios, you might be able to adopt the venture fare system if you were partnering with one of the transit operators in the region. And you could also have some models where certain user groups get free fares and other users pay a cash fare. And then finally, at the bottom of the slide, we identified some of the more popular revenue options among different shuttles, but there's certainly a wide variety of ways that shuttle operations are funded. And then I believe this is our final slide, but as you look forward to implementation, these are some of the steps that would need to be taken. So confirming a service plan, what route or what zone do you want to move forward with? Then you could look at selecting a preferred service operator, then preparing for implementation and setting up a system for implementation and monitoring. So thank you for your time, and I'll hand it back to Lindsay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was the feasibility assessment that we did. And so what we're looking for now, again, is your preferred concepts, what you would like us to consider moving forward should we identify some of those revenue sources, grants, or have the ability to partner with some of the transit agencies in the future.
Great. So just to make sure we don't have any public comment in the room on this agenda item, right? Okay. So I think it's very important that as we begin this conversation, we're very clear on what we want staff to spend time on, or quite honestly, not. And, so that we don't have them, obviously. I don't think it needs further explanation, but spending time on things that if we really don't think that we're going to be pursuing an option, okay? And so we'll look to find where that consensus lies and on the different options that have been provided to us. Who'd like to start us off this evening? Trustee Eater.
I can kick us off. Thank you for the presentation. So I have a number of questions that I had as I was reading through the report. So I think the first one is just going back in time to the mid-2000s shuttle, and it was canceled due to low ridership. My first question right off the bat, I saw in the report there's an expectation that this new shuttle service, and I'm actually curious if it's the same for all of them, I imagine there's some variability, that it would be 5 to 18 times, there's an expectation that it would be 5 to 18 times more ridership. But given that the population of the village hasn't really changed that much, it's like maybe plus 5%, I think, in the last like 10 years or so, or 15, I guess, in this case. How are we determining that why do we think it's going to be 5 times as a minimum more popular than what the previous shuttle was?
So I'll let you answer if you have a different answer, but I think the idea is that we were wanting to design something that would be more attractive than the previous shuttle and would encourage more ridership through either having shorter wait times, being a little bit more inviting, having a more convenient route. We've lost a little bit of institutional knowledge around that program, but what we heard from the community and from some of the people who were here when that was happening is that it was one vehicle, so the wait times were long. Sometimes the vehicle would come and it would be full, so you waited but you couldn't get on, and issues like that we were attempting to design around for the study.
Okay, thank you. I'm also curious about, so I think when this initiative was started, after that happened, the transit bill passed in Springfield, and all of a sudden there's like, well, I think it's like almost $2 billion in public transit spending is available. And I actually just read, I think, Corey, you shared this with me, is that PACE is already talking about expanding some of the services on, I think it was Roosevelt and then Ridgeland and maybe others. I think that's just where they're starting. So did you take that into account? And also I assume there's other potential changes that could come down the line that would impact the sort of like underlying study that we did here. So is that factored in here?
Yes. So in our stakeholder discussions with the transit agencies, that definitely came up. PACE has their revision study where they're looking at ways to improve the network. They're looking at improved off-peak service, and I believe overall they're looking at improved off-peak and weekend service, as well as other network changes. I don't believe, well, I know there are some changes that they are contemplating in this area, and their draft concepts are available online. So we reviewed that. I don't remember offhand exactly what they were, but they didn't have a substantial kind of change in terms of the network structure, as I recall.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think it was increasing service on existing, well, not adding new service or new routes. Right. I think is what I saw too. Okay. Okay. Another question I had was, so I mean, just looking at the traffic patterns that I think was near the top of the report, the highest peak times are essentially like school drop-off and pickup, right? So like a big factor here is the D97, like school buses, and then I understand that D200 does not have a school bus program. Is that like correct? Okay, that's what I've heard. So have we talked to D97, D200? Are they stakeholders in this? Would they want to get in with it and pay for it with us? What does that conversation look like?
They were stakeholders during the stakeholder engagement and helped us understand a lot of the needs and the gaps that they currently have. They did not volunteer to fund the service,
Sure.
But their needs and their observations about their students' needs were definitely taken into consideration. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. And those were factored into the routes that were proposed here. Is that right? Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay, so onto the greenhouse gas emissions. I know you didn't mention in your presentation, but I read in the report that was like, because this came from CROP, right? This is in the Climate Action Plan to do this feasibility study as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I saw some numbers cited as sort of a range for all the different options. Between it looks like it's around between 20 and 100, metric tons equivalent of greenhouse gas reduction. So I did some math, and I looked at the most recent greenhouse gas inventory, and I sort of factored out some of the other aspects of it. And since we spent so much time focusing on building electrification, as it is the largest source of emissions, I kind of looked at that section, and I did a rough calculation. Maybe you have a better one, but on average per year, a building in Oak Park is producing about 6 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Might be, give or take, there's a range, right? But that's what the average for the whole village is based on the most recent numbers. And just from a return on investment, if we're talking about greenhouse gas reduction, we could electrify 10 or 20 homes and get the same reduction in emissions. And that's a one-time cost versus every year. So just from an ROI perspective, even if we paid for the 100% of the upgrades, which I know we don't, right? We have grants that do some of it. It's just not a great way to reduce emissions. So I think that particular, I was hoping those would be better, but and I think the numbers you have seem right. It doesn't seem like if that's a major goal here, it's actually not really meeting, not taking a big chunk out of those emissions. So when it comes to that, I want to think about being very thoughtful about the dollars we spend, and if we're thinking about it from that lens, this doesn't seem like a great, efficient way to spend money to reduce emissions. So. Is that right? Is that anything I say there sound wrong to you?
I agree with that. The emission reductions are not exceptional. To see emission reductions from this, we would have to be displacing a lot of gas vehicle trips. And one of the things that came up in some of the stakeholder engagement too was I think that there's a lot of pedestrian trips that maybe would be moved onto the shuttle, and
neutral.
So some displacement, but I agree with you that if greenhouse gas emission reductions were our only goal, that there are likely other ways that we could achieve it.
Okay, got it. I realize that's not the only reason, but I think the impetus for this was in the crop plan, and then I think there's obviously we're trying to solve, as you mentioned, many things on that checklist. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it really does a great one on the emissions reduction. So those are my questions. I think where I'm going to add on this is it seems like we live in a village that has access to 3 transit agencies. We have PACE, we have CTA, we have Metra, plus the school buses, plus the township. There are so many options out there, and it just seems wasteful, frankly, to stand up another transit agency. I would much rather us partner with an existing one. I'm open to spending dollars on it, village dollars on it, but the concept of us buying our own vehicles and storing them when that's an unknown, where do we put them? The capital expenditure to do that I think that was not, we don't know what that picture looks like yet. That's a lot, I imagine. If a fire truck is $2 million, I think, you can get an idea about how many 5 or 6 different electric shuttles would cost. Maybe slightly less than that, but still, the numbers add up. So it doesn't make sense for us to start from that and do it ourselves. So I'd be open to looking at what a partnership with one of these other agencies look like. And it looks like that's what Niles did. I think that was one of the examples cited in the top of the report, that they had a trolley system, but eventually they became PACE bus routes. Yeah. And they just pay PACE to do that. So that seems like a viable path to go down. And that's frankly the only one I'm really interested in based on this. I appreciate all the work, and I understand this was it was meant to, the goal in CROP was to do the feasibility study, and it has been done. But I think there are other ways to achieve this than running our own shuttle service. So that's where I'm at.
I will just say that the previous shuttle was a partnership with PACE. Okay. And in our conversations with PACE, they indicated that they did not have and would not have in the short-term future the electric vehicles to support this if it was electric that we wanted. But so that's part of why our staff recommendation is maybe at some point in the future, PACE could support something like this.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I'm curious to hear my colleagues.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to go next. No volunteers, Jim?
So I just had a few questions also, and Derek made some excellent points here about the return on investment and looking at the numbers. We don't know to what extent we'd have to, it might require a capital input from the village, and also it seems to me like certainty of funding to really to get lock this in a way that would be meaningful for the future. We know we'd have to do it for multiple years. The cost per year is very high, and when one of the goals is the crop, and I think you've done a good analysis there, kind of on the quick analysis, and it sounds like it's not the best perhaps, and that's one aspect of it. But my question is economic vitality. I think this would be good. I would like to know where we stand. What's the analysis on that? Because is that something that if all things were equal, we would seek out on our own and try to do this, or for the sake of the business districts, or, I mean, I don't, in 08 it didn't work. I do remember that vaguely. It was not a big thing, though, and I don't think, and you look at the cost per rider, and it's like $29 for a ride, and we did a what do you call it, valet service for a while when Lake Street was under construction, and the cost to park a car was over $50 at the time when they canceled it quickly. So you get into those kind of calculations, and you're like, I don't know if this sounds good. But economic vitality, maybe you could add to that.
Yeah, I think the challenge and the opportunity with this is there's so many different angles to it, and economic vitality was one. We tried to make sure that that was part of the study. One example you see in the study is just some work that actually in the previous community that I worked in, LB, we enabled the LB circuit to support our business districts in very dense areas where we were parking impacted, certainly people downtown and the various business districts down by the shoreline. And so 4 days a week. Here I think we're saying it's, operational 7 days a week. And I think that's really not just focused on economic vitality, it's focused on it's to support the business districts and to support gaps in service for kids and stuff like that. So there was really not like an isolated analysis on just economic vitality alone. I think we were trying to combine everything together, and this is how we arrived at the options. But if we were to do something exclusively to support our business districts, then the numbers might be a little bit different than they are presented in the report. But the cost per trip would, like you suggest, would likely be similar. It's just the overall amount would probably be lower if we just focused on a circulator around our business districts for a few days a week, as opposed to 7 days a week. So unfortunately, we don't have a very specific, segregated analysis on supporting the business districts. It's trying to do everything. And so that cost is reflected in all of the options.
Right.
But if the board, part of tonight too is to complete the goal that was defined in CROP, to do the analysis. And we really want to hear from you all on your feedback. We recognize that some of these options are very expensive, and the return on investment, there are questions around that in terms from a sustainability standpoint, but we want to complete the job, get the input. If there's something you want us to look at further, we would certainly want to do that and then bring it back. And so that's why tonight is really not just the completion of the feasibility analysis. We don't have a financial plan to support any of these options. So if there is a coalescence around like, hey, look, let's go back and look at, this from just strictly an economic vitality lens as to, and how that aligns with the businesses, the village's interest in that area in particular, then we can certainly do that and provide more information. While I'm talking, though, I do want to acknowledge that despite what the outcome of this conversation is, with the partner stakeholders, school districts, and some community stakeholders, there still is, I think, an interest in addressing the gap of school children after school getting access to services in the village from a transportation standpoint. And so there's likely to be still some communication with us and the partners around how to resolve that issue and community stakeholders, despite the outcome of this study, because I think that is just something that has been articulated by community stakeholders as a need to address the issue. And then to the point about a funding plan, if we were trying to address that issue, we would not try to address that issue alone from a financial standpoint. We would seek out partnerships with the school districts and park districts and so forth.
Of course. So just as a thought, it occurred to me, and probably everyone else on the board, that why don't we just buy like half a dozen self-driving cars and let people pay? Well, I mean, it did occur to me, but I just want a couple points, and I'll move on. I thought the analysis was very good, and I appreciated this. It was comprehensive and very thoughtful. So I thought it was a really good analysis to go through it and see. It did expose, of course, a lot of different competing issues here that make it difficult for me to support. Even the recommendation by the staff, I know, and I'm not poking anything, saying anything bad about it, but the recommendation was to get our recommendation. Proclamation. There wasn't anything concrete, like you often, not always, but often you'll say like, do this, adopt, don't do. This was like, no, we want your input. Well, that's great, and I'm telling you what it is. I don't think I'd move ahead with it. I don't think I would think we've done the analysis, as Derek said, per the crop report. I'm good with letting it move on, but the analysis, I think, that spoke a little bit to that uncertainty part of it, perhaps, because it was great. A little bit. I'm not saying anything bad.
Yeah, we I think didn't want to presume like the board's consensus on a particular direction, and we wanted to make sure we got your direct feedback. And I think, Lindsay, you can add to this if you need to. The recommendation was really for us to get input from you all on either one of these options or a combination to really understand what your interests are or is, and then that would give us some perspective on how, what we need to do next. And so if that is waiting for PACE to procure electric vehicles, and then looking at continuing to look at grant funding that might support a model that you all might be interested in, then that's what the staff's follow-up work would revolve around. So it would not be like, oh, we're coming back to you in 6 months with a specific proposal. It would be, we need to find out whether or not, when it is that PACE could actually partner with us, whether or not some of those grant opportunities that were afforded to communities who did this, before we did, are back and available for us to pursue, and come back with something that's feasible that would meet the goals, the board's interest. And so really the recommendation is, honestly, is really maybe taking a pause and looking for opportunities to address whatever your interests are in the future when there are opportunities to do it, either through partnerships or grant opportunities. So I think
I agree with that assessment. Our recommendation really is that the appropriate thing to do is to wait until these resources are more available. We heard from the community a wide range of priorities that the community was looking for, a very high-level service, and so we were coming here with that input from the community that we did, and the modeling that was done by T.Y. Lin to get a sense of what made sense to you all and what you would like us to move forward, so that when these opportunities become available, we sort of know what to move forward with.
Yeah, because if it's alternative 4, do nothing, then we won't even look for those opportunities, those future opportunities that Lindsay's speaking of, grant opportunities, partnerships with PACE, and so forth. We would just stop working on it altogether.
Corey.
Manager Jackson just touched on a whole lot of stuff that I was going to touch on, so appreciate that. I'll start by saying, I wish this was cheaper, right? Because it is expensive, but I do think there is a real need for this, and so I'll speak for the voice that's not present here, and that's the students. We have a lot of kids in our village, right? I mean, a lot of our village is driven by the school system, and if you've ever driven across the village in the morning time, dropping off your kid, or in the afternoon picking them up, right? If you're coming from Southeast Oak Park and going to OPRF and vice versa, right? Like you could just tell, like the amount of car traffic is generated. I'd say a predominant amount. I'm not quite sure yet if I'm right on that. It's a hypothesis. I'm looking for data to verify that, but my anecdotal experience is that a predominant amount of the actual traffic generated in Oak Park is around pickup and dropping off of kids. The reason for that is that there's no other way to get them to some of these places other than walking or biking. Now, that's great when it's a day like today, well, absent the rain this afternoon, where, you can say, hey, go walk to school and it's fine. But it's a lot harder to get your kid to walk to school from Southeast Oak Park and actually make it on time unless they leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? It's just kind of it's a stretch, right? And, I don't think that we have a really good way to get kids around our village from two different perspectives. One, for them to build that independence other than biking, which, you know, we've delayed our bike plan implementation this year, so there's that. And then there's also, you know, so ultimately what happens is that parents drive their kids to school, right? I see it every morning. There's a market difference on a nice day versus a not nice day when the amount of cars that are on the road dropping kids off. If it is a rainy day or if it's a cold day, there's a lot more cars taking kids to OPRF than there is if it's a 60-degree day when you see a lot more cars, a lot more kids on bikes or walking. This is a significant problem because a lot of people move here for our schools. And so we end up with a lot of kids here trying to get across town. We only have one high school. Kids going from Southwest Oak Park, Southeast Oak Park, some of the corners of Northeast Oak Park and Northwest Oak Park, they're all trying to get to OPRF. There is no good way, right? So what you end up is with a bunch of cars traveling in a caravan, right, and causing a lot of unsafe traffic conditions, literally unsafe traffic conditions within view of the school building, right? It is really ridiculous. That said, those folks aren't in this boardroom today because kids don't show up to board meetings, but they are, I think, the prime constituent of this. Oh, hey guys, did you want to make public comment? But it is a big, I think, opportunity to, this service would address that big gap, right? That big opportunity if we were able to connect up our middle schools and our high schools to more regions of our village. Because I think it would just give our kids a better way to make it to school, to be independent in doing so, and then also to go to those after-school jobs that they have, and so on and so forth. So I think that is, in my opinion, like the single biggest driver of something like this if we were to execute it. Second to that, economic vitality, to Trustee Taglia's point, and Manager Jackson, your point earlier, right? Like, I do think, I see this, if we were to do something like this, as an investment. This would create the interconnected neighborhoods, one of our goals, right? This would bring our neighborhoods together and get folks who are in, say, Northeast Oak Park, maybe down to the Arts District a little bit more often, and vice versa, right? And then that creates the ability for those businesses to thrive a little bit more because now they have access to more customers across the village. Right now, you got to drive, and if I get in the car and I got to drive, maybe I just go all the way to Chicago. Who knows, right? Like, there's just it's a little bit of a different thing. I don't know, there's a war going on. Like, when I looked at the news this morning, gas prices keep spiking, oil prices keep spiking, right? I think people want to drive less when gas prices are $5, $6, maybe $10 a gallon. Who knows where they're going to end up? There's a lot of unpredictability going on right now. Mass transportation tends to do well in those situations. This seems to be a cycle that we keep ending up in that situation. So, I don't know. I would like to continue to pursue this to see if there's a way to make this financially feasible, because I do think there's an opportunity here, and I do view this more on twofold. One, from the opportunity with our students, and then two, from the economic vitality aspect as an investment rather than an expense. Though that part, I think, would need to be we would need to do a bit more research into that to kind of validate that thesis actually works, though I think it does logically. So that's where I stand on this.
Brian.
A lot's already been said. I'll try to be brief. I support the staff recommendation of waiting for funding and resources to be available for implementation. To Derek's point, I don't think this necessarily makes much sense for us to sort of forge boldly onwards on our own. This is definitely something I would want to do, but at this price tag, it's entirely unfeasible for us to take on this annual commitment, and this is without even pricing in the capital considerations. And so I think that it's it's just not feasible from a village-funded perspective. I think a fixed route model makes the most sense, particularly for the higher demand time periods, because a sort of rideshare model would get completely swamped if we were trying to use it during a morning and evening rush, particularly for students trying to get to school, and long wait times for a kid trying to get to school means that the service has failed that child. And so I don't think the on-demand kind of rideshare service makes a whole lot of sense. At the same time, I think that the option A fixed route, it does a lot of what we want to do, but there are large portions of the village that are unserved by the fixed route, and so it feels like, what about Southeast Oak Park, which only has north-south service, and if part of the goal is, Southwest Oak Park, Southeast is covered. If part of the goal is to get people to the high school, we're not covering that part of the village, and I don't have a solution to that, but it's something that I note if one of our primary use cases is that the high school doesn't provide transportation. There are large portions of the village that are relatively distant from the high school that are simply unserved by the model that we're looking at. I also, to the point of the cost not being feasible, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the confidence sort of level is in the 5 to 10 times ridership. I have concerns when 81% of people said they weren't willing to wait more than 10 minutes for a bus. I think what I'm hearing there is if on any kind of regular interval I'm having to wait for more than 10 minutes for a bus, I'm just going to end up driving or getting there otherwise. Because if you're trying to use this as last mile transit to get to CTA, to get to Metro, stacking a 10-minute wait on top of the 10-minute wait you're going to have for the train, the variability of your commute gets much larger, and the times get much larger based on those waits. And so it seems like demand might be there if we can show up every 5 minutes, but it's already not feasible at showing up every 15 minutes. So I'd be interested in trying this if we find funding sources, if we're covering a substantial portion of this bill, then it seems like the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so I would be a no unless we've walked into a grant where we're going to get to pilot this at almost no cost to the village for a period of years.
Trustee Anya? Oh, please. Corey.
One thing I forgot to add, there's a lot of comments in here from our transit partners who are concerned about us duplicating their routes that they don't service. Are they planning to expand their routes? Because this wouldn't be necessary if the Pace bus was actually dependable. right? But it's not. Try to get one on Ridgeland, comes like one every 3 hours. And so like that's that, and I can only speak to that one, but from what I've heard talking to residents here, there are folks that I know in Southeast Oak Park who walk all the way to Harlem to catch the Pace bus that's reliable, right? Versus trying to wait on it on Ridgeland. So like when I see in the comments from our so-called partners in this deck saying that they wouldn't want us to duplicate their routes, duplicating routes that they're not actually serving, which is why we're having this conversation. So I'm curious if they did speak to any service improvement on existing routes, because I think that would be helpful in the interim.
Yeah, I think we spoke to that a little bit at the beginning of the conversation of some intended increase in capacity on the routes. But I think that comment also was just making sure we were aware of where the routes were for potentially making our routes more optimal. But we did hear that from stakeholders too, especially on weekends, that the frequency wasn't enough to meet their needs on some of these routes.
Not even just weekends, weekdays. Mm-hmm. Like I could not put my kid on the Pace bus to get them to OPRF on time. Mm-hmm. They might make it tomorrow, right? Like it's that bad. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in there. And Brian, you mentioned something. You talked about the concept of like rush hour traffic and folks needing to be to have the shuttle show up at a certain time. But then you kind of imply something else about maybe off-peak, not necessarily that being the case. I don't know, maybe that's what I picked up. But I think my point is that a hybrid situation where we have a shuttle that's running more consistently during rush hour and more maybe on demand outside of those times might be a consideration, too, to keep the cost down and also service the routes that we're trying to do.
Thank you. Trustee Anya?
I'll try to be quick. Yeah, I think that for a number of years before a lot of this stuff happened, we had some reliable modes of transportation that serviced the kids that we're speaking of before. So there was a kitty cab service that took care of kids under a certain age, and then you also had the junior highs that had their own bus service that ran a late service that would do periodical stops through the north side of Oak Park, south side of Oak Park, and middle Oak Park. And then, obviously, if you were after school with the high school, there was no true setup, except for there were bus systems that ran very close to the high school and they were far more reliable. I remember it was like once in a blue moon when my brother would call from a payphone when we had payphones, and he's like, Dad, the bus never came. And it was very rare, though. Like, it literally had a time and showed you on there, and that was the time that it actually came. So I think times have changed, no pun intended. But right now, I think to Village Manager Jackson's credit and Appoint, and same thing with Trustee Wesley, what we're really trying to see and what a lot of us have been talking about for the last few years in some of the conversations with some of the other partner agencies within Oak Park is that youth are trying to gain access to other opportunities throughout the village, whether it's programming throughout the park district, stuff that's going on at the library, or stuff that's going on at their school since they no longer provide those services. It's now very hard for a parent who might be either working a long job or multiple jobs to figure a way to get back home, get their kid to wherever they need to go, and then get back to work. It's creating like this issue with, transportation on another level. And I think, yes, I would love to see this done if we had the funds to do this, so that we could provide this as a opportunity for our residents. But I do think that there needs to be some mutually shared costs here so that the other agencies understand it's not just for economic vitality, it's not just for our youth, it's not just for, not just for people who are under a certain age. I think, even the retired, yes, we do have our, our stuff through the township too, but there's like we said, having other options makes it a lot easier of congestion on the system as a whole. But if you have everything running through one service, no way are you going to get kids to high school and everyone to all the things that they need to get to. But I do think that this would help to ease some of that congestion and make it a lot more transit-oriented for Oak Park. So I do think we need to see where those grants will end up, if there is an opportunity for us to apply for these or to, show them we have a plan, and we do want to be more, in the game partners with people like Pace. But I understand, Corey, this is the reason why I work in Oak Park now. Having to take multiple different types of transportation to come from downtown Chicago to getting where I was, and then sometimes the train is full or something crazy happens on the train and you get off, and then you're like, oh wait, how am I getting home? And you take a bus and you get all the way to Austin and Madison, and you're like, oh, the bus doesn't let me go through Oak Park, so I've got to walk from the rest of this way. So you quickly learn these routes, but if you're, like I said, trying to figure out your way to navigate through Oak Park without that car, and you have kids here, it makes it difficult to do all the things and still try to keep your carbon footprint low, and get everybody where they need to go. So if there's an opportunity, please, search for it. And how, I hope we can count on our partners to actually look at this as we don't want to shoulder all of this. This should be something we all do together to make this move forward. And I think these numbers will look a little bit smaller when there's other people contributing to it. So.
Jenna?
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, my main questions seem to have been answered, so I won't double up on what my colleagues have said already. I'll just say that from my reading of the report, I was coming from a sustainability perspective. I know there's a lot of competing objectives that were addressed and thoroughly, spoken to throughout the report, and it was very interesting. I think the idea is really cool. Like, I really like the idea. But from prioritizing sustainability, if it's not most likely going to reduce car trips, and the potential is all this potential, right? Because we don't actually know, but the potential reduction in greenhouse gas emissions based on, the comparison with what that same dollar investment could reduce through other efforts, it's not appealing to me at this time. It doesn't seem feasible as at least a sustainability initiative. Regarding, I know we're talking a lot about there are a lot of gaps mentioned throughout the report, and I think those are important for us to address, but specifically the OPRF high school students, maybe this is not the solution to that problem. Maybe we need more of a mutual aid solution, or at least some brainstorming around creative models to support, safe transportation. Obviously, we want walking and biking as much as possible, but as Trustee Wesley mentioned, there are plenty of days in our climate that, don't allow for that. So I'm open to continued conversations, but I don't think the options that were presented tonight are feasible today. So hopefully, that's enough clarity from my point from my contribution for us to maybe move on to a better use of sustainability dollars.
Okay, thank you. So I hear that we don't see this as the biggest impact on sustainability, but I'm also hearing that if grants were to come forward or be identified, is that there's some interest at reducing congestion in the community and particularly serving young people. I'd a little bit like to take a poll, just to make sure that there is enough will of those who are interested in, you know, if that funding comes forward, that you want staff to actually be preparing for that opportunity and pursuing those opportunities and, you know, keeping a close eye on those opportunities. Do we have enough folks that are like expecting staff to spend some time monitoring that situation? Yes?
I guess a question for what kind of staff time are we talking about for monitoring funding opportunities? I'm not expecting staff to continue design of a program, but if for instance the state were opening funding for pilot programs for, you know, EV connector shuttles, then I'd want us to investigate whether it might sort of suit what we have already here.
Right, so I do know that we keep an eye on all sustainability grants that could be potentially relevant to our climate action plan. So that covers what you're saying, but I did hear from Trustee Enya that he'd like to see us ready. So what does that mean for us, and what would that require? Because like with some state type grants, there is an advantage to being what would be referred to as
Shovel
ready. But we don't really even know if that opportunity is going to come our way. So if we hear of a grant, is there enough of a window of time to then take this study, turn that around, and be prepared on a typical basis? And if there's the will of, you know, but because otherwise I do hear that there's at least 1, 2, 3, and I guess I would put myself there for a fourth vote. At that monitoring in front of mind. But I'm also going to contribute further that I would hope to see partnerships, not just with PACE or other, as you know, Derek mentioned, he would want to see a partnership. And so is that a ride hauler, or is that like the township and the high school and whatnot? Because I'd like to see, there are some creative models that we see in other townships that are, you know, for seniors. And so could that potentially be expanded for youth? But then we've got the tourism discussion. So I think we're just a little bit ahead of our full, having full benefit in a tourism EV vehicle. You know, to imagine a couple of years down the road, a Percy Julian Museum and a cultural arts center and other things that we can highlight. Then with that economic vitality plan, I might, you know, see that in 3 to 5 years. But without the funding coming forward now, it wouldn't be a priority for me just yet. And I'd also want to see then in that case, you know, access to that Chicago Avenue, Percy Julian Business District on the east side of our village, which was not in the routes, right? But again, that's for a future discussion.
Sorry,
Yeah.
could I get staff's response to the question of how much time?
So the time commitment is, you know, having like Metro Strategies, our contractor, actually, you know, proactively search and monitor when there are grant opportunities. You know, it's not just one single staff person that's doing the reading and analysis. There are meetings and conversations around those opportunities and making decisions about whether or not they're viable and so forth. So that's on the grant side, right? And to just even cap that point off, like if the board said, hey, we're not interested in any transportation options any further, we just wouldn't even direct Metro Strategies to look at that. We wouldn't have any, you know what I mean? So it's not that it's like an overwhelming amount of time, but it is, you know, time that impacts, you know, our workloads. That's one point. On the question about the youth, clearly that would be something that would be a partnership between the jurisdictions. And so we have stakeholders in the community that are still interested in that. If they're convening meetings and having discussions with the different jurisdictions and inviting us into those meetings, then we're spending staff time having those conversations. If there's no interest in even looking at that, then we would politely say, hey, you know what, at this point in time, we don't have the direction to actually even explore these opportunities. So we won't participate in those meetings. And we would just, you know, offer any, you know, basic advice or information that we have to the partners and the community members who are interested in pursuing that, but we would not participate in any deep discussions and meetings and so forth like we have in the past. So it's that, and so that's why we thought with this recommendation, at least if there was an interest in like youth and EV and looking at grant sources, if there's an interest in us to continue to do that's not, while it's our staff time, it's not significant enough to where we felt like it would be so impactful that it would divert us from a lot of our other activities. But so it's really just trying to be clear about how we direct our staff efforts. And so, yeah, so it does have an impact. It's just a minimal impact compared to the other options, because the other options we're looking at actually coming back with some draft models. We're actually talking about building a financial plan and, you know, and all of that.
So to your polling question, I would say, you know, having our consultant monitor for opportunities, but if it's an opportunity that's not providing a significant amount of funding, then we don't need to take the time discussing it further. Correct. Because, you know, unless we're substantially defraying that $3.2 million price tag, it's not gonna be a drop in the bucket. And I would say, to the extent there are other stakeholder conversations going on regarding youth transit, I do think staff should participate in those, because if D200 were putting together their own model for this and was asking us to be a participant, that would be something that I think I would want us to consider and discuss. I just, as a village, I don't think we can go it alone based on what we're looking at here.
Okay. Derek?
Appreciate the conversation. Yeah, and I think, you brought up what I was thinking as well, and I think, Corey, your earlier remarks were a really good case to be made as to, like, why does D200 not have a school bus? Like, I'm actually very curious as to know the history there. I'm sure folks maybe know, and I texted my friend who's on the D200 board to try to figure out a little bit more about that. But to sort of wind this back to, or tie these two things together, and to Brian's point, if we're going to be, you know, like, pursuing a grant opportunity, I assume that means like, and then we're ready to go and act upon it if we got it. I wouldn't want us to go ahead and act upon it alone, as Brian said. I think we should do the work we can to start, like, to get on the same page with the other taxing bodies first and say, okay, we as a group are ready to go for this plan that meets all of these different goals. It doesn't sound like those conversations have gone very far at all, or if they haven't even really necessarily started beyond the stakeholder participation that you mentioned earlier, Lindsay. So it just seems like that's like the missing piece here. Like the D200 and D97 should be partners in this as we pursue those grants, right?
Well, yeah, and Linda, you can address this too. I think we have been having ongoing conversations with the jurisdictions prior to even starting this feasibility analysis, and then obviously carrying those conversations into the feasibility analysis. And I think from our perspective, and at least from my perspective, when you look at the objectives of the feasibility analysis, we've never seen ourselves as the sole funder of these initiatives. And so if we were just if we were just exclusively looking at economic development and vitality, that's completely within our bailiwick, and we maybe would consider that as us being a sole source to do that. And even so, we would look for other resources to leverage. But in terms of like servicing the youth, addressing transit gaps, we know that that's not our primary service. And so what we, I think, have been doing is trying to aggregate all of those interests, work with the stakeholders, find out what the community is interested in. And if there is a specific direction, then we would follow up and actually go have deeper, more involved conversations about partnerships and things of that nature. So like, for example, if you guys were to direct us to move on any of these options, we will be talking to D200, D97, the township, and any other potential partners, right?
Yeah,
to
correct.
carry the work forward.
Yeah, we engage with the school districts regularly on sustainability initiatives, and would pursue this should that be the direction.
Great. So I feel like you do have enough information for your direction based on this conversation. My point earlier in response to Brian's question is that you actually typically see the grants first and make the decision with the village manager's office as to what goes on to the metropolitan, but you would see those. So, all right. Then, so there's interest in partnership, and if there's significant funds that could be pursued, then we definitely, it's a good thing. No one's saying it's a bad thing. Does not necessarily like have the biggest bang for the buck on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Appreciate that analysis. And then the tourism conversation I do consider separate. I just think maybe for a future date.
So I just wanted to, one quick thing, and I won't talk a whole lot. I don't view the student aspect as just unique to D200 and D97. There are 6 taxing bodies here. It all comes out of one tax bill. If we raise ours or they raise theirs, doesn't matter. It's going to be the same amount. The ultimate cost is going to be the same, paid by the same people, right? We don't have 54,000 people divided by 6, right? We've got 54,000 people, and they're all our constituents, right? And typically transportation is a municipal function, right? So the way I look at this is that if we can do something that increases the quality of life and meets a need in our community, then we should do it regardless of whether or not we get other intergovernmental partners. Now, that said, I would love to have partners, right? It would be great to be able to split it, but to me, it's not a necessity if we determine that the need is there and we want to go forward.
Right, but I think those stakeholder conversations are important because everybody's coming to the table, though, in them with potentially investments they've made in the past that could be rolled over into a contribution for the future, and that sometimes that's taxpayer money that's already been spent. So we also don't want to reinvent anything, and so like the township, for example, has a bus that they use for seniors. Could that be electrified? Could that be, could the access of that be expanded for some partnership with, say, activities between the Park District and D97? Then that's not the municipality, funding something as the taxpayer for all of us. It's reusing what's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I think that potentially is something we should consider. And apparently, I almost hesitated even mentioning it because I don't have enough information, is that there is some opportunity for taking older vehicles and actually electrify. I don't, talk to Gary Cunene. But also C4 being a regular place where we hear updates on grant opportunities. And as well as, and sometimes those are transportation grants and not necessarily sustainability grants. So Village Manager Jackson, do you feel like you've got the consensus here?
Yes, I do.
It's a keep an eye on the ball, but not like fully move forward with the pilot.
Yes,
Okay.
We'll continue to look for opportunity, funding opportunities as they arise, analyze them. We'll continue to have conversations with the taxing bodies and stakeholders around those interests concerning the youth. If there are opportunities to explore regarding economic vitality, we'll definitely analyze those opportunities to see if there's enough return on investment to actually create a conversation here at the table. So, yeah, I think we got direction. I think this all is consistent with option one, or the recommended option. And then it clarifies to staff that the board does want us to actually be, on an as-needed basis, be active in these conversations. And if something materializes, we'll bring it to you.
Right, but I also, that PACE, any pressure we can put on PACE to expand.
Yes.
Even if it was just straight down Madison Street, right? Then I think that would make a big difference.
I think that's a very good point. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Oh, and then zip cars. Did we look at any data on zip cars and the use of that in our community?
Yes, there are 8 vehicles available in Oak Park that have an average of about 60% usage, and that's costs $13 to $19 an hour.
Okay, thank you. So if we really do have some hardship situations, maybe through relationships in ECHO, where we could provide for, say, that single mom situation or whatever, and some vouchers for zip cars, to me, that might be something to consider. Okay? All right, thank you. And so now we are moving on to, Craig is ready for me. Presentation and resolution authorizing the adopting of the Roosevelt Road Corridor Plan for the Roosevelt Road Business District. So this does have a resolution, so can I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Village Manager Jackson.
Yes, we're going to jump right into it. Craig Baylor, Development Services Director. The last time, I think, was the Roosevelt Road Plan adopted in 2001?
It was, I have that in my presentation, but it was 2001 when they created it, but the village adopted it in 2005.
Okay, well, I'll let you do your presentation. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, Craig Baylor, Development Services Director. As Manager Jackson indicated, the current plan for the redevelopment of Roosevelt Road was completed in 2001, but adopted by the village board in March of 2005. The plan was a joint municipality study with the city of Berwyn, as this plan is that's going to be presented this evening. The current plan was a first ever comprehensive redevelopment study of the corridor representing Oak Park and Berwyn, as well as the first ever tri-community implementation of a mutual corridor-wide streetscape and form-based code zoning with Oak Park, Berwyn, and Cicero. Through the village board's development of community-wide priorities, a goal to update the Roosevelt Road Plan was adopted. The update to the Roosevelt Road Plan analyzes specific conditions along the Roosevelt Road corridor in Oak Park and Berwyn, identifying goals in keeping with the community's desires for increased economic development, better design principles, and ensuring compatible land use through a series of recommended actions designed to meet specific objectives. The Lakota Group began this project in March of 2025, and since then have held multiple very well attended community meetings, focus groups, meeting with the Plan Commission, and individual conversations with representatives from Oak Park and the city of Berwyn. It is our hope tonight to adopt the plan for Roosevelt Road, but we do want to hear what your feedback is on the draft plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Lakota Group, who will present the draft plan for you, and then we can have questions after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kevin Clark. I'm a Principal and Director of Design with the Lakota Group. And I am joined by our team, who I'll introduce in a second. And as Craig mentioned, this has been nearly a year-long process for us, lots of engagement, lots of discussions. And we're going to try to summarize a 125-page report at this hour without boring you to death. So we're going to try to give you some high-level thoughts on what the planning process was, what we went through, the engagement effort, what the plan framework is with goals and recommendations, implementation, and what we see as next steps, and hopefully answer some questions as we get into it. Just quickly about our team. I'm Kevin. Alexis, you're going to hear from her as well. She's a planner with us. We had other folks on our team. Josh, who is not here tonight, but he's our economic development guru. And we had other folks in part of the plan. You may be familiar with us. We've been in town before. We did the Marion Street streetscape, Lake Street streetscape, worked on the Arts District, so very familiar with Oak Park. I was personally involved in those. Unless you don't like them, then you can call someone else at our firm. But we're very proud of that work. We see this as a different context and really want to see improvements on Roosevelt Road. We're joined by the rest of our team. Kinley Horn, Justin Opitz is here tonight. They're our transportation expertise on the plan. And then Sightline Planning and Zoning, Jake Side, is also been in town a bunch doing zoning code work with you guys. I'm going to let Alexis go through some of this, and you'll hear a little bit from all of us tonight. We'll try to break it up so we don't bore you, and then hopefully have some good discussion about it.
So yeah, just a little bit about the planning process. We typically go through a 3-phase planning process. So the first is engaging and assessing. So that includes an assessment of existing conditions, field work, walking up and down the corridor multiple times in 80-degree weather, talking to the community through stakeholder interviews, workshops, and that ended with the existing conditions report. The second phase was envisioning the future, bringing ideas that are informed by that first phase to the community, seeing what they think. And then the third phase is implement, so drafting the plan, getting feedback from leadership and staff, and then eventually finalizing it. So at the very beginning of the planning process, we identified these objectives. So we're trying to achieve cohesion along the corridor, so making it seem like a district, a destination, from west to east, east to west, just making sure that people know they're on the Roosevelt Road corridor. Enhancing safety, so we heard time and time again that there are very high traffic speeds and that there's a need to improve pedestrian crossings. Also a need to enhance walkability, so safety both across the street from north to south, but also people want to be able to walk along the corridor. Another objective, economic vibrancy, and then, of course, collaboration and coordination among the city of Berwyn and the village of Oak Park. So like Craig said, this was a great engagement process, very encouraging. We had 2 steering committee meetings, which went very well, 17 focus group conversations, 2 open houses, and lots of attendees, lots of survey responses. So this tells us that when this plan goes to be implemented, there will be the support of the community. And yeah, folks just really want to see the Roosevelt Road corridor improved. These key takeaways, I spoke a little bit to them earlier, but they really reinforce those objectives that we set forth at the beginning of the plan. So people want to see Roosevelt Road as more of a destination. They think it's unsafe right now, and they want to improve conditions in order to encourage visitation to the area. They also recognize that the corridor has some amazing assets. Thinking like dining establishments, Fitzgerald's entertainment, music venues, and they really want to build off of that. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there is very strong community support for streetscape improvements like street trees, street furniture, things that will make that pedestrian experience a bit better. And definitely the community supports programming, events, public space activation. They want to see more of that. This is just a little peek into what the plan document looks like. For each of the chapters, we pull some of these facts and figures from community engagement, from the existing conditions report, into each of the chapters as a preface. The plan is organized into 5 chapters, the planning framework, and these were identified through that community engagement process, through conversations with staff, and through the existing conditions report. So in each of these chapters, there are goals, and these are just the primary aspirations that we're trying to achieve for the corridor, and then each of those are supported by actionable recommendations. Just a review of what the Plan Commission had to say and what Berwyn had to say. So they really wanted us to focus on implementation and delegation. So now we have the implementation matrix that delegates these recommendations and items. They believed that pedestrian safety and corridor activation were their preferred short-term recommendations for the corridor. They also wanted to make sure that we called out where improvements should occur, and also thought that placemaking and streetscape improvements would be the most impactful. So we just made sure that we reflected all of this in the plan document. So now we're going to just do a very high-level review of these chapters, and I'm going to hand it off to Kimberly Horn.
Hi everyone, Justin Opitz with Kimberly Horn. We were the mobility section of the plan here. So I'll just kind of step through this holistically, step through each goal and the recommendations associated with it. I want to start by saying that while we were engaging the community, we often heard that people, just didn't feel too safe crossing the street. So that was kind of the impetus for all of these goals here. So the first is really to improve the pedestrian mobility of the corridor. It starts with walking east-west along Roosevelt Road, but also crossing north-south across the street. So the first recommendation is to install pedestrian-oriented infrastructure at existing crosswalks. So this is maybe increasing signage, making the crosswalks high visibility striping, just allows pedestrians across the street feel a little bit more safe, notify drivers as they're approaching the intersections. Identify locations for new crosswalks, particularly north-south across Roosevelt. We heard this repeatedly throughout the process, that people like to come to the corridor, they want to come to the corridor, but they don't feel safe crossing north-south. Identify locations for new rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So these are just infrastructure that would sit at particular intersections, and you as a pedestrian could walk up, press a button, lights turn on, and it alerts drivers that you're trying to cross the street. And then lastly, coordination with IDOT, or the Illinois Department of Transportation. They do have jurisdiction over the street, so improvements that will be made will need to be coordinated with them. Some pictures here just kind of showing what I was talking about, enhanced crosswalks going north-south. This is not specifically Roosevelt, but something that it could look like. You definitely see this on Madison Street, other streets throughout the Oak Park. Next is curb bump outs at the bottom. So this is extending the curb into the parking lane. This reduces the distance that pedestrians have to cross and makes it feel a little bit safer for them. Second goal was to balance the regional transportation needs of the corridor with safe local access for all users. So we do recognize that this is a corridor under IDOT's jurisdiction. It spans multiple communities across the region. So we need to keep that in mind, but we also were hearing from the local constituency here that they need this to feel and want this to feel safer for them. So implementing things like traffic calming measures to discourage speeding, access management strategies to help limit the amount of curb cuts along the corridor, facilitating broader bike connectivity. So that would be kind of cross streets north-south across Roosevelt. So how this corridor plan can help support the implementation and extension of those routes, and then transit stop infrastructure and accessibility. So coordinating with PACE to ensure that stops are signed, and exploring transit shelter amenities to make it better for people waiting for buses. Here's a couple pictures of some of those recommendations. This could be infrastructure like bike boxes. So this would be north-south routes that would be crossing Roosevelt. It would just allow the bikes to queue in front of vehicles and make them more visible. Also things like landscape medians. So this would be medians in the current center shared turn lane. This would have to be at very strategic locations because we want to be sensitive to emergency vehicle accessibility along the corridor. But we do think that these medians can help calm traffic, because we heard often that people will speed down the center shared turn lane. And then the last goal is providing convenient parking access. So this first recommendation here is to coordinate between both Oak Park and Berwyn to have consistent parking regulations on both sides of the street. And I think right now, one side is 2-hour free parking, the other side is 3-hour free parking. We should be aligning those just to reduce any confusion for patrons. Also identifying opportunities for additional parking along the cross-street commercial frontages. So this is once you're turning off Roosevelt, there's a short distance that you're still along commercial frontage where on-street parking is provided on some cross streets. There are additional opportunities to increase that parking, public parking count along the corridor. And then lastly, some shared parking agreements. Perhaps this could be business to business, where you have maybe an office use that could partner with a restaurant, because the office use has parking demand during the day. Restaurants have parking demand during the night. They could share that parking demand. Or if there is public parking, there could be agreements as new developments come in that portions of their site are dedicated to public parking, which then could be shared by businesses amongst the corridor. So strategies like that. I'm happy to take questions when we're done with the presentation, but I'll pass it back to Lakota.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the streetscape public realm. Obviously not mutually exclusive to safety and enhancements that Justin's talking about. And I'll say, we laid out the entire thing on our big conference room table and had a 10-foot long map and went through specifically and asked at every intersection, how can we make this better? Because I sat there and talked to people that live in Berwyn or Oak Park, and they live in that neighborhood, and I watched them. I watched a mom at Friendly try to cross the street there with 2 kids, a stroller, and a dog, and her elderly parents. And it doesn't feel good. So that was the impetus of us going through and trying to figure out what specifically can we do to calm traffic so that it feels better. It's not about the sake of just making it look pretty. That's a byproduct. We want the aesthetics to be better. I think having better aesthetics links to a better shopping environment, a better environment overall that people can be proud of. But it's also that safety element when you see the landscape median, having a crossing, a refuge. I was at a walk yesterday with folks from IDOT and another community in a big wide corridor similar that blasted through their downtown, and we talked about raised medians. And the guy at IDOT was like, hey, we like that. Now, you got to manage emergency vehicles, but things that can help make it better. So, as we look at this plan and we advance it, I think having a plan that's proactive helps have that conversation. Anyway, the goals, just creating a comfortable pedestrian environment. We talk about things like street trees, landscape. I'm a landscape architect. Of course, we think that environment would be better, but we heard it from the community. So these are things directly that they told us. What would make it feel better for me to walk around? I don't envision that everybody's going to be hanging out, having coffee and stuff on the street, but can we find those opportunities on the side streets or in these other places like cul-de-sacs that exist? So just thinking about all those things. And you see just the list of other recommendations. We want to repair things that are deteriorating, make sure that we have a safe passageway, that the concrete and the pavers aren't thrusting or breaking up. Thinking about the lighting and pedestrian scale lighting, and just establishing some coordinated maintenance and waste pickup program just between the communities. And I think just having that shared responsibility to make it feel better, it shows that there's some pride. And I think there's some folks that really want to see that happen. we show images of, this is an IDOT roadway in Park Ridge that we did. That's a narrow sidewalk condition where we have street trees and benches and things like that to make it feel better, and just thinking about how we can beautify a little bit. And the second goal, go through just creating opportunities for community gathering, public art. There is an artful, creative population of people down here, and the folks at Fitzgerald's are painting a mural right now, and so we start to talk about those things. And I know you guys have done those things in other parts of the village, starting to create a mural program, I think leaning into some of those things, so that you can really just celebrate the local identity, the history of the area between Berwyn and Oak Park. I mean, there's an imaginary line here in the street, but we're looking at the corridor as a whole. And we're looking at it as this is a collection of these neighborhoods that feed into it. So just thinking about how we can do that and activate it. There's some events that are being proposed to happen on parts of Roosevelt Road. But I think having the village and the city work together to create events that would really bring the community out there. And that doesn't take infrastructure change. That takes the will for people to want to do it. Things that are happening. We worked with the Berwyn Development Corporation. They bought a property, this vacant lot that's right by Bodie Thai, and they're in the process of creating a little community public plaza, a little arts, called the Arts Plaza, and we did a little design for them. Maybe the existing cafes on either side can have some movable furniture. You can invite people out there. They can have coffee, enjoy a little bit of time. You can have murals. You can have restrooms. And then and there's just a list of things you can do from a community standpoint. Small property, but big change. And a lot of those goes a long way. And so it's kind of thinking about some of the small things. It's not all about the IDOT project and having to do that. It's also about these types of things that we can control that are on private property, including building improvements and stuff like that. And then we show the idea there's all these kind of cul-de-sacs and little dead-end areas. Can we improve those? Can we close those off on a weekend? And those can be places for programming. Those can be places where you can have a coffee kiosk, or the adjacent business can have something spill out. So just finding those opportunities doesn't have to happen within that right-of-way, that really constrained Roosevelt Road right-of-way. You've got all these other kind of spaces off to the side that they can happen. And we've identified in the plan. And then the third goal is really just strengthening the identity. I feel like Roosevelt Road doesn't have that identity. The Arts District has the identity. There's signage down there. Marion Street has an identity because there are improvements. And I remember when Marion Street, frankly, wasn't that strong of a business district. It was closed off. It was, the old mall, the pedestrian mall, and there were some landscape mounds and some rats maybe running through, and there were some vacant businesses. And so those types of improvements work together. We saw the public improvements, but then we saw private investment as well. And so just creating that identity, leaning into maybe better gateway elements and stuff like that. We showed some ideas that build off the existing brand, and just some piers or something that you can identify along the way. It helps make it more cohesive. It helps make it feel like more of a street that you'd want to be on, more of a place. And, this is one snippet of that 10-foot long plan that we were drawing on, and just showing the different ways that we were thinking specifically at each location, how we could make that crossing safer. Can we have bump outs? Can we have the cul-de-sac place that's a little better, a little plaza? How do we deal with that when you've got curb cuts and other things and parking lots? And how do we make that environment better, but also safer for pedestrians? So we've got this all in the plan. This is just one example, kind of showing down the street here a little bit. And then a couple of these intersection 3Ds to really show, well, how do we manage access with where the bus stop is, where we can add maybe a little bit of extra detail at the crosswalks with bump outs, and controlling that traffic and making it calmer and feel better. A little bit about this, and Jake's going to dive in here as well. I'll start it out. Just thinking about, because there's also there's vacant properties and disinvestment, and so we've identified a bunch of those. what's a higher and better use, where places that we think there could be redevelopment and things that could really improve, in that where that public infrastructure can attract private investment. And I know you guys are probably working on those things, and they're not a new conversation a lot of times, but identifying them and bringing those things to the community for people to weigh in on. And I'll let Jake talk a little bit about this as well. Yep.
Thanks, Skip. Good evening, Jake from Sightline. We've been talking a lot about zoning, so it's very nice to be with you again. For goal 2 here, our second big goal was to update and really modernize the zoning regulations for the Roosevelt Road corridor. And as we've discussed lately, the Roosevelt Road district hasn't been conducive to the type of mixed-use development that the village wants to see. So the existing standards, they have too many variables when it comes to development. We have things like building height, parking location, and built form. So our recommendation here is really to coordinate development regulations to preserve the look and feel of the corridor while accommodating new growth. So as part of the zoning update, we've had a number of recent conversations with you all and with staff about the role that corridors can play in accommodating new housing. So the recommendations in this plan really coordinate with some of the conversations we have been having with the missing middle housing project. So it's good to see that coordination is there. For goal 3, we really wanted to promote mixed-use development that is context sensitive. So that means prioritizing mixed-use development where it's appropriate. It also means encouraging integrated parking solutions where possible. Justin touched on that as well. And, looking at my final slide here, referencing some of these building typologies that would be appropriate along the corridor. So Lakota produced these really wonderful typology designs. And this gives you everything from a small parklet to 1-story infill commercial to a large 4-story mixed-use building. So, all the possible scenarios that we might see going forward if the design regulations allow. I'm going to hand it over to our economic development piece.
All right, I'm back to chat about economic development. This section is really all about consolidating that identity, creating a stronger district, and supporting businesses. So this first goal is establish Roosevelt Road as a recognized music, dining, and entertainment destination district. Like I said earlier, these are the assets that Roosevelt Road already has. So it's about building off of them, supporting those types of businesses, working across municipalities to grow that sector, potentially bringing music-themed public art, murals to the corridor, and considering activations like live music, pop-ups, things like that to really reinforce that identity. This is just an example, a concept of what could happen on Roosevelt Road. Murals not only attract visitors, they also slow traffic down and consolidate that district identity. Just another example of a fun interactive element. These are little drums that are, I can't remember what community it is, but just an example of music-based activation. Goal 2 is about supporting and retaining existing businesses. So promoting the existing facade improvement programs, and then also, of course, just talking to businesses, seeing what they need, and addressing the challenges that they have. An example of facade improvements. So this is a building along Roosevelt Road, and we just wanted to show how simple improvements could really uplift the properties, still pay homage to that historic character. This is on the Berwyn side of the road, by the way. I thought you were asking about that. And then goal 3 is about diversifying commercial uses and filling in business gaps to create a more complete and resilient district So it's not just about the entertainment, the dining, the music. We want to bring all sorts of businesses to the corridor. That could mean talking to businesses that are already thriving in Oak Park and Berwyn, seeing if they would like to open a location along the corridor. Things like white box improvement grants are one of our recommendations. And then also establishing a business incubator. These work really well in some communities. You know, a business comes in, they get incubated, they start out, and then they move to another space along the corridor. This is, so Josh isn't with us, but this is from his hometown. It's just a business incubator, looks great, mixed use, and really helps to grow that small local business community. And then our final chapter, intermunicipal coordination and implementation. Kevin was saying that there is this imaginary line that runs between the north and the south. And in order to implement this plan, there's a real need for coordination. And that can be achieved through, first and foremost, creating an implementation committee with stakeholders from both municipalities. A starting point could be some individuals from the steering committee. They're already really interested in the success of the corridor. And then, of course, staff members, people like that. Establishing regular roundtable meetings to hear from stakeholders, hear about what they need. Something as simple as creating a shared digital implementation matrix. So you see that there's the implementation matrix at the back of the plan, just making sure there's communication and that both municipalities are accountable and see what's being implemented on either side. And then shared intermunicipal agreements. So we heard that maybe coordinated trash pickup, things like that. That would be important. And then a couple more, regular joint planning meetings among staff, and then considering establishing a pilot joint funding pool. This could start with really small improvements, and it could be like public art murals, and then potentially a shared marketing budget to fund joint events. We created the implementation matrix, and that is at the back of the plan. This is a roadmap for each community to follow. Just a little example here. So we show the recommendation, the priority level, the time frame, short to long term or ongoing, potential partners, cost level from low to high, and then we do bring in character areas, so where some of these recommendations would work best. This is a carryover from the last plan, and we really did want to bring in what we thought were good recommendations from that plan that didn't get implemented, and have that inform some of the recommendations of this plan. And then one more thing on the implementation matrix. It's flexible, so this isn't set in stone. This is why regular meetings are important, so you can revisit it, make changes, change priority, because conditions are always changing, the economy is changing, so it's natural that this may need to be flexible. This was just a thought exercise that we went through, just thinking through what are some implementation steps that could happen right away once this plan is adopted by both communities. So of course, establishing a corridor implementation committee, looking at some of those intermunicipal agreements and establishing shared commitments and responsibilities. Simply sharing the plan with developers, seeing who's interested in some of these opportunity sites, maybe that Enos site, seeing if someone wants to get in there. Beginning conversations with IDOT. This plan is a really important piece. They like to see a plan first, which is why we're laying out this whole vision, because yes, they may not say yes to everything, but we want them to see what the community's vision and goal is. And then establishing a pilot joint funding pool can start small, and then potentially doing an event series. So something that will show the community and stakeholders that people care, that both municipalities care about this corridor. They're ready to work together and ready to bring more visitors to the corridor. And then next steps here with this process, after this meeting, we are going to have another meeting with Berwyn on Tuesday and hope that the plan will be adopted by both communities. Okay. And then, yeah, happy to discuss this with you all and answer any questions.
I'm going to go to Chibi first because I know he's got a schedule to keep.
All right, I missed that first part. Can you start all over again? No, I truly appreciate it. Like Corey, we both live on the south side. I'm like 5 houses in from Ridgeland and Roosevelt, so I'm right there. And I think there is, a lot that our community hopes for in that area of Oak Park. I think being on that corridor, I think we look at all the corridors and hope for a little bit more from the borders of Oak Park. I think Harlem, you're fine with, but when you go to Austin, North Avenue, and Roosevelt, there's stuff to be desired. But with Roosevelt, when I say that, I don't say that about the Berwyn side, because the Berwyn side is pretty developed, and they've been developing this over the years that I've lived on this side of Oak Park, and seen, if everything from the small shops to Vibe to, the growing of Toronto, like everything is kind of hitting off in the right direction on that side of the street. And I just don't want them to be like, oh yeah, that's the Oak Park side. How do we, match that vibrancy is, what I've seen through part of this is creating some opportunities there. I think it was funny as you were talking, I do this sometimes, just go by and my community and see opportunity, and I look at the buildings, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of empty space here. Like, what are we doing with these buildings, and how do we match the other side and create, these activation spots for the community? I really liked what you did with the cul-de-sac. I think that's what I like to see is like, how do you create a neighborhood within a neighborhood and give people space? I used to work on Michigan Avenue, and, we had the huge medians in between, and people would take their wedding pictures and all those type of things. And I look at Roosevelt, I'm like, nope, I'm going to get hit by a car. So how do we create an experience where people feel safe, but also where people can walk with their family across the street and not have to worry about, like, is this, double Dutch, am I going to be able to get across the street before I get hit? And like there usually is that sigh of relief after you cross Roosevelt, like I made it. And I know we talked about this. I was like, oh, you seem so familiar, because I remember us being
we chatted a little
bit,
yeah.
So now I want to continue to look on to that safety. How do we make it a safer area? We've talked about the flashing lights at some of those intervals. I think will contribute and make it a little bit safer for families, but also you have people who run errands. I live right next to that Walgreens, so there's people from Berwyn who are running over really quick to grab something, or they've sent their kid over and they're crossing Roosevelt. So not everyone is making it to the busy side of the street to wait for that button. I forgot what all the names for everything.
RFB?
Yeah, yep, there you go.
Or the big button.
The big button.
Oh.
Big button.
Wait.
Yeah.
Justin's like, I know.
Right. All of our terminology. So I think creating a lot of these different pieces are going to make this a better situation, but I do think there needs to be a start, and it does start with safety. I think you build the safety and the infrastructure and then go around that. How do you then, create some of these spaces within? How do we then have these larger conversations, and it looks like you're about to be moving forward with Berwyn City Council, having that conversation around what is it that we mutually want to see within this space, whether it's, you know, the growing of the art, the continuing of the safety, the building up of, you know, mutually beneficial buildings, and how is each side of the street developed. I think all of those are great questions. I want to see all of that done in the area because I know my neighbors are asking for it. They want to see calmer streets. They don't want to always go to past Madison to go to Lake Street to have a good time. We want those areas to feel like Marion. You want it to feel cozy, and you want to be able to say, hey, I'm going right over here, and it not always be Fitzgerald, even though I used to work there. So I think like there's wanting to build all of these things, and I think you've done a great job of road mapping it. I think we can figure out some of this, but I know there's going to be tons of questions. I still look at half of these buildings and I'm like, who is using this? What is this building for? Like, we've watched it not get used for so long. How do we start to work with, you know, the business districts to figure out what can we activate? If this building is going to remain unused for a period of time, does that landlord want to do something different and get into something that could bring vibrancy to the area and potentially dollars to them? Like I said, I feel like Roosevelt is one of the most trafficked areas throughout Oak Park, but it doesn't matter if no one stops and stays, you know, and it doesn't, I mean, it does matter to us if they, you know, go to, I would love them to stop and stay on our side of the street, and trying to find more reasons for that to happen. But I do think it is mutually beneficial. If you grab something one place, you are more than likely often going to stay in the area and do some more shopping or visiting. So thank you for this. I think it touched on a lot of things for me, and I'm sure my colleagues have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Corey was probably right away, but Brian's good? Brian, thank you, Brian.
I mean, I'm going to be relatively brief. I really, really like this plan. It is a sort of the devil's in the details, and it's all about implementation. Because you know, one of the things you discussed in your presentation is some of the stuff from the 2001 plan adopted in 2005 that is just sort of sitting there and has been allowed to deteriorate. And, you know, there was a picture of one of the trash cans, and I'm down on Roosevelt Road frequently, and I see those trash cans overflowing and rusting. And so the comments about actually having setting up agreements whereby each of the municipalities involved cooperate and have a plan for maintenance, all of that is really important, because otherwise it's a temporary solution. It's lipstick on a pig. It doesn't actually meaningfully advance the issue. And I think that the streetscape elements of, you know, of the signage, that stuff is all important, and we need to make sure we also implement the things that make it a walkable community, because those streetscape elements, the beautifying streetscape elements, rather than the sort of the Vision Zero kind of streetscape elements, don't do anything if you're just driving by them. We need to create a community where people want to stop and get out of their car and experience multiple parts of the community. And then I think the development and urban design, the zoning part of this conversation is really important as well. Something in what we did in our Roosevelt Road zoning is not working. That's demonstrated by the fact that it's not working. We haven't, it hasn't been built. And so I think that us re-examining that and looking for opportunities such as that, 1 year option to purchase, to go out and find developers for certain parcels makes a lot of sense, because if we could get some sort of keystone developments, mixed use developments, those are the kinds of things that cause businesses to come, because now there's more of a density of consumer that they can serve. And so I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the plan. I do believe if we are able to execute on this, we could see Roosevelt Road come back to life, because I think right now it's a very confusing stretch to go down, where there are some blocks where it's like, this is incredible, and you get a block or two away and you're looking around and you're like, this is not a place I want to be. And I think we can get there, but it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of communication with other government partners. So I'm all for adoption. I think that it's going to take a lot of work for us to make this happen, and I hope we're invested in making that work happen.
Thank you. Corey?
Okay, so love this plan, honestly. I do have a couple questions about it, and mostly centering around like the implementation. The way I read this is that a lot of this stems on the pedestrian safety kind of aspects of it, which all rely on IDOT saying yes, which, IDOT is kind of like the ants in Lord of the Rings, right? They take a long time to do anything. So if we can't do anything, if we can't do all these other things until they say yes, and it's going to take them 5 years to say yes, how does that work?
I'll dive up there. I don't think everything relies on IDOT, but a big part of that long-term change does, at least relying on making physical improvements that make it feel safer. So to me, you have to start somewhere. This process needed to happen. It was time. When we talk to residents that are probably your neighbors, we've been forgotten about. All the cool stuff's happened in the center of town. But it's time, right? And so you can't go to IDOT without a plan. They're not even going to talk to you, right?
Right.
So having a plan that's been thought through from people that have done projects with IDOT, Kimley Horn, us, there's some weight there at least. And so to me, if it takes 5 years, then it takes 5 years. That's why it's a multi-pronged plan, and there has to be other things that are happening too. That's why we say we need to activate it. That's why we say we need to bring the community together, whether it's events or finding those little things, facade improvements, the art. Like those things can also happen too. But I agree. I think ultimately the success of the street, there needs to be some intervention physically for it to feel like it's a place. Like this should feel like a place that you want to come, not driving through. I don't know if you want to add to that. That's just my, yeah.
So I think a big part of this when communicating with IDOT can also be relying on the data that's in the plan. So we did take a look at some of the safety characteristics of the corridor and the existing conditions. There are some challenges related to some crashes that involve pedestrians, bicyclists. So pointing that out when you're coordinating with them and when you're, putting this in front of them is going to be important. I think another big piece of it is relying on what the residents have told us. Basically telling IDOT, hey, we went through this process on purpose. Like, we got all of this feedback on purpose. This is what our constituents are telling us. Please work with us. That does go a long way when communicating with the department. Also, just building the relationship with them over time, staying consistent and staying in front of them, and not just reaching out once, having them tell you no, and then you say, okay, well, we tried, that's it. There needs to be a consistent, every 6 months we're following up and saying, hey, we have this plan, we're trying to implement things. This is what our community is telling us. What are we doing here? Can you please work with us? So I think there's a number of steps and strategies that we've outlined, and we're happy to partner moving forward. But I think it's consistency, it's relying on the data, and it's just staying in front of them, and really continuing to push them to work with you. If you look at Roosevelt in Chicago to the east, as soon as you step over in the border, there's crosswalks north-south at every public street intersection. That can be a thing we're pointing out to IDOT. Why is that the case in Chicago and not the case here? So there are things we can use to our advantage to, I think, push the conversation forward.
Okay.
I agree. Just one more point. So when we did the streetscape in 2012, we did work with IDOT, and one of the things that we wanted to do was do the crosswalks, the mid crosswalks with the flashing lights. Yeah. And we had to go back a few times to get them to agree to that. So we had to prove it up that was necessary, and so we eventually got it. So we can work with IDOT if we, as you said, we show the data and have them understand that we need the improvement that we're looking for. So it can be done.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so definitely not saying that it can't be done. It's just question like the length of time and how that affects the rest of the plan. Yeah. Right. Then the streetscape. I think the streetscape is beautiful. I always with me and streetscaping. For me, it's always I consider streetscaping the boost to a corridor that is starting to get its legs under it and go, versus the thing that jump starts a corridor and makes it go. And so I'd love to hear a different perspective on that, if that exists.
I don't know if it's totally different, and I kind of brought this up. Look, we did the Marion Street project, and people weren't improving their buildings at that time. I think that improvement helped create a district that the physical improvement that said, hey, I'm gonna improve my building. I'm gonna put a private investment in that. Right after that, we worked in Plainfield on Lockport Street. They took jurisdictional transfer from IDOT on Lockport Street. There's their main street. They did a road diet. We did design the road diet, redid the streetscape, and literally there were scaffolds up and new permits for outdoor dining and seating. And so I've seen that happen. I've seen it be one of the things that kind of lights the fire. I'm not saying that's necessarily the only way, but I think there is a way to get public improvement that helps push that private investment.
Yeah, so I should also differentiate too. When I say streetscape, I'm not talking about like facade improvement, right? Yeah. I absolutely agree with you about facade improvement, right? Improving the infrastructure of the street in that way, I think, does convey a sense of place and up and coming. Mm-hmm. Right, I'm thinking more like we put it in like benches and that sort of thing. Like I'm not sitting on a bench on Roosevelt Road right now.
Yeah, there's only a few places you would, but those places are places. Like I'll sit outside Friendly. They have a little spot, and so and frankly, like Fitzgerald's created their own place, whether they did it by permit or not. Like they created a place, right? It's like, hey, it's very much a destination, and so there's finding the opportunities to do that. And again, that's why we're showing like maybe it could be on those corners in those little cul-de-sacs, and maybe so it doesn't have to be, because you are constrained. I'm not saying it's not a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. It's a constrained corridor in the right of way, but that doesn't mean it can't look better.
And that doesn't mean we can't slow cars down, because some of the stuff that we heard when we first started talking to people about funerals coming through and gunshots and things that were just wild, right? And so I think some of that's gotten better, and I think we really need to, I think we really need to lean into how to make it feel like it's really controlled, safe, and frankly, if somebody changes their commuting pattern that is driving through town to go to someplace else and they use a different way, okay, right? Like, we're dispersing traffic. There's a lot of east-west arterials. There's the highway. So to me, if it slows people down and dissuades a little bit of that traffic that's just blasting through, I don't think that hurts you guys. We want people to come through, slow, stop, and shop or enjoy the experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I totally agree with you on that. Again, I'm just highlighting what I feel like are the challenges to get in there.
Sure.
Right, because I do think some of these things were highlighted in the previous plan too, and 20 years later we're discussing them again.
For sure, and I can't say it enough. I think the coordination between Berwyn and Oak Park is paramount. You guys need to lean into the human capital of people that are interested in this. I mean, people devoted on the steering committee their time. And they are very interested and invested in seeing changes. And so, I mean, we've been a part of plans where you literally have people sign up, like after a year, you want to sign up and volunteer. Anyway.
Yeah.
So forgive me, I have to call for a motion to move beyond 10 p.m.
So moved.
How do we get to 10 o'clock?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Technicality.
Yeah, so those are really my the two things that I wanted to surface here. I do think that I agree with. I mean, it's hard not to agree with what this plan is presented. Right there's a lot of good stuff in here, and I do like. Oh, I want to touch on the zoning part to Trustee Strauss' point, and as it was mentioned earlier, I think that the zoning change has to be one of the top priorities. Right, I know that it's not like order of operations in the plan like number one, but I think if it's one of the things that we can do the quickest that can signal the loudest. We can change the zoning and market that change in that zoning change. This is the Oak Park Berwyn Entertainment District zoning plan, right? And then this is boom, boom, boom. So immediately when you see that, this is what we're doing. And then when you look at whatever those details are, they have to align with what that thesis is, right? And that's quick, easy, and free. And so that one would probably be the thing that I'd surface the quickest, just because we're already in the middle of a zoning thing anyway, too. And again, it's free. And everywhere that covers that, right, like it's going to be first and foremost right there. So now all of a sudden we got search traffic too, which is also great. But yeah, so that's all. I think this is great. I think it's going to be a challenge, up for a challenge as always. I live in this area, so I want to see it succeed. I just don't want to go in with, I won't say that because I'm always an irrational optimist, to be quite honest. I'm not going to say I don't want to go in with irrational optimism. I'd like to couple the irrational optimism with a bit of pragmatism, right, to ensure that we actually accomplish the goals that we set forth.
All right, thank you. Now, if there's repetition, then we can just say.
Unique thoughts, okay. So I do support the recommendation, and I want to make sure I mention that. A couple of comments. I will say that my experience is that Roosevelt Road is very fast, and of course it's narrow and fast, so it's very difficult. Chibike's comment was very interesting about the goal should be, or one of the goals maybe, to try to meet what Berwyn's doing, right? Whatever the difference is between Oak Park and Berwyn, they're killing it right now, and our storefronts are empty, right? So whatever the difference is, we need to focus on that and try to meet and copy, perhaps, might be a better word, what they're doing, because it is successful, and you can't deny it, and they've done a good job. So a couple other comments to make. There are parts of Roosevelt Road, and forgive me for saying this, that look like a dump, I mean, they're really in bad shape. And I don't mean to sound too critical, but there's a business on Roosevelt that's actually being used as a dump at the moment, and it's being addressed, and I get that. But that's the kind of thing we really have to focus on, because that's, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And our weak link in Oak Park is Roosevelt Road and North Avenue. We can't forget North Avenue. And so I just want to say that my focus would be moving ahead, looking on how we're going to fund these things, right? This is a very important thing. We talk about all these great plans, and now we have to pay for them and fund them. And I would support strongly a TIF district on Roosevelt Road. And I think that that is a key part of this. It's going to be, it should be. I think it makes sense. And I think we need to really get into a discussion quickly and try to come to consensus if that is something the board would like to do. Because I do want to see this succeed, and I think that would be key to making it successful. It worked in other areas in our village, and it should work down there too. So that's some of everything I have to say. So thank you.
All right. I'll try to be brief and unique as well. So I live 2 blocks north of Roosevelt. So I'm in the club, guys. I go on Roosevelt all the time. I do walk to Fitzgerald's, even though I have neighbors on my block who are like, we should drive. I'm like, we should walk, even though, but we cut through the neighborhoods and then we go down, right? We don't walk along Roosevelt. Okay, right? So I think this plan's great. I also support it along with my colleagues. I wanted to just jump in a little bit from the things from the 2005 plan that didn't get adopted. Is there a general theme about why those things didn't get adopted? Is it that it's hard to get stuff like IDOT to agree, and I heard it's hard to get IDOT to go along with things, and there wasn't enough coordination between the municipalities? Are those the reasons the things carried over from this previous plan to this one, or are there other things we didn't bring up?
Yeah. So yes, I think you identified it correctly, is that the coordination between the two committees wasn't the best. We did have agreements on the taking care of those crosswalks. So Oak Park takes care of one, Berwyn takes care of one, and Cicero takes care of one. So we had those agreements. We had unification as far as the streetscape. We had conversations about how to take care of all of that stuff, but there wasn't really any formal agreement beyond that. And things kind of fell by the wayside. We did our own thing, they did their own thing, and it just didn't come to fruition, some of those suggestions in there. One of the other things that they suggested was creating some sort of committee to review all the development activity on Roosevelt Road. Now, Roosevelt Road used to have a business district, and the business district actually was both sides of the road. And so there was communication about that. But it didn't really go beyond that with anything. Okay. And, to answer your question, or to your point about the TIF, Berwyn has a TIF. So that's what's helping support the development on that side. They have some money to put forward.
Okay.
We don't, so.
Okay, excellent, thanks. You segued well into my next question. You said Cicero. Cicero is not involved in this plan, to my understanding. They did not fund it. They're not mentioned as a partner right now. Right. Why? And also, can we bring them in even after we adopt this plan?
I mean, we reached out to them. They were not part of the first plan in 2001 either.
Oh, okay.
They didn't really join the team until we did the streetscape project. So we can always reach out to Cicero again. Some of the same players are there that when we did the Roosevelt Road Plan streetscape project. So we can always reach out to them and see if they want to kind of join in the fun for Roosevelt Road. So I have no issue with doing that, and they may want to if we do anything, because the streetscape improvement that we did went all the way down to Austin on both sides. And they even wanted to take it further onto further east on their frontage against Chicago. So I think they'd be willing to play with us
Okay.
we wanted to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I've already reached out to, I have a colleague, a relationship with Alderman Rob Pabon, who's the alderman in Berwyn. I think it's the 7th Ward. It actually is most of Roosevelt there. So we've been talking a little bit about it. He's very, I was actually curious. Oh, what did they think of the plan? And it sounds like you will know in a week after you present it to them. But he's very excited.
He's very excited.
Yes, he's very excited, and I'm hopeful that his colleagues will also be supportive of it as well. And yeah, what is the vision, right? It seems like there's been 2 different visions that have been playing out in the 2 different sides of the street over the years, and I'm just very curious to see what that looks like. I mean, I think when we were talking earlier, Corey, you mentioned that, and you see it on the map, like they've gone all in on, hey, add more parking, turn these cul-de-sacs into parking lots, and that's one of the spaces you talked about activating. And that's pretty different than, hey, we're going all in on pedestrian, right? And there's just different ideas that have been at play here for a while, and I'm just very curious to see where we find a collaboration and an agreement, and how much of the distance we'll maintain as we move forward as a partner. But we have to find that middle ground, and that's going to be work. And I'm happy to participate in any way that's helpful to help make that relationship happen. Because we have to. And then I think my only other last thing was, yes, just +1 to the zoning. We can do that pretty quickly. I'm glad you're working on both projects. It's very efficient. So I really am looking forward to some of those changes that we can. It's one of those sort of like lower hanging fruits that we can go for early. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Jenna?
Hey, I'm still here. Okay, yes, I would like to echo my support for the plan. I think it's great. Thank you to all who worked on it. I thought the presentation was also really helpful following up the report. Thanks also for all the good engagement that took place, especially with our neighboring communities. I think the collaboration with Berwyn so far it's very much appreciated, and moving forward will be key, as many have already mentioned. Some of my questions around implementation have been addressed. Generally still fairly curious about sort of the concretization around next steps, like next immediate steps and a timeline. Agree with those who have said to prioritize safety. I know some of those things are expensive and depend on, partners like IDOT, but certainly feel like some of the most important investments. But speaking of safety, I can't help but mention, and this was actually alluded to in the plan with a photo of Mike's place. I know we've had challenges, very serious safety challenges with that property and with that business. And so I just couldn't help but, I can't not mention it because it's a concern. And obviously, our relationship with our neighbors in Berwyn, will be necessary in resolving that and any future similar issues or issues that are similar. So the other thing that I also can't help myself but mention is that while there's a lot of need and very great ideas and proposals in this plan, in my personal opinion, Roosevelt Road is already better than North Avenue, at least my northeast corner. I'm only a few blocks from North Avenue. So I just need to sort of put on the table and in the back of everyone's minds that we also need to address developing our northern border of Oak Park, because I would love to see something very similar invested in that side of town as well. But hopefully that will just sort of linger and marinate, and we can come back to that when the time is right. But really excited to see investment and development on Roosevelt as well. That's it.
Okay, Village Manager Jackson, do you have something to add first before I close this out?
Yeah. If you're going to close this out, I do want to add a couple things, and some of it is just summary. But this is really appreciate the feedback and the support. I just want to highlight a couple things that I think is really important for the staff to to understand. You know, we've been working on this. We've been having conversations. We stood up the economic vitality team. You know, we've made some moves with development services on the implementation side. We're hopeful that, you know, we're going to continue to be on offense and advance this work after you adopt this plan. But, you know, when we're talking about things like an entertainment district, I just, you know, want to confirm, you know, because that changes the, you know, when you think about things like Mike Place and stuff like that, and I know that's not what we're shooting for, but when you're talking about an entertainment district, we want to go after it if you want it. You know, if you're talking about underutilized, dilapidated properties, that might imply proactive property acquisitions. Our team was just talking about a couple of properties along Roosevelt Road just earlier yesterday, you know, and, you know, so it's helpful to have something like this and clarity from the board on whether or not you would entertain that, because that gives us the confidence to say, hey, look, we see a couple opportunities, we're going to bring them to you. Trustee Taglia helped us. I was going to mention this. I'm just going to reiterate it since he brought it up. But one of the things that didn't occur with the last plan is that Berwyn they adopted a TIF district and we didn't. There were some suggestions in the last plan about a TIF district or an SSA, something to that effect, to support the activities. So we appreciate the input on that, because if there's an appetite to do that, we certainly think that that's needed to support the effort. Cicero, yes, I think still Chicago too, because on the east side of Roosevelt at that intersection in Austin and a little west of there, you know, it could use some TLC, and I think we do need to have some conversations with Cicero and Chicago and start to build those relationships. You know, outside of that, I think I'll just let it rest, but I think this is great input. It gives us clarity of the interest of the board and direction, and I think the implementation really revolves around having that direction in our staff. We built the team to try to have the capacity to move forward, so I think the clear direction is helpful.
Yeah, I think everyone's comments are great. I mean, entertainment district, yeah, I think that's wonderful, but I don't want to necessarily overly limit to more, but I don't think that's what you're alluding to, you know, or saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is that we really, if that's the direction we want to go, we want to pursue it assertively, and it may imply doing some different things, marketing incentives and so forth, and so, and even, I don't even know, some land use considerations maybe to promote entertainment along that corridor. And we just know that you know, we have, there's some density down there with residential, and so obviously we'd be looking to protect that. But at the same point in time, we might need to do some different things and think creatively and actually bring things back to help support creating that district. So all I'm doing is trying to just kind of really summarize what's in the plan, and then get the affirmation that, hey, we're okay with that, because for the staff, it's just helpful for us to actually have that direction so that, you know, we can move at a speed that is, you know, consistent with being proactive and not, oh, do they really want this? And, you know, is this, you know, so I'm just trying to acknowledge what's in the plan and affirm it, because some of these things are a little bit different than what's there now, particularly if it's, you know, if you're going to be generating nightlife and entertainment. There's some things that can come with that may not be desirable. And in terms of the property acquisitions, that's another one. So it implies costs. We're not automatic. We haven't been automatic in recent history in actually bringing potential property acquisitions to the village board. We started to do a little bit of that in recent history since I've been here. But I think with the direction tonight, clearly there are opportunities along Roosevelt Road where we can have some conversations even in the near future about acquiring property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a couple of property, Enos, first one that comes to mind for me, that's been sitting vacant for a long time. But there's different opportunities in different sections of Roosevelt Road. How big is the Cicero district? Blocks? How many blocks?
It's from Austin to Lombard.
Austin to Lombard. Okay. But like on our side, because you also see in Berwyn where they had the incubators, you know, the small lots. so an incubator in that district, I think would be a great thing. And and restaurants, and more than just music contributes to entertainment, right? But music I'm a big fan. I was a music teacher. But are the lots on the Berwyn side deeper?
They're similar.
Are they similar? Because like Fitzgerald's property is quite, it's a big piece of property. Friendly Tap is there, but,
Are they similar?
okay, all right. Well, that's great. Well, then I'd love to know what's possible, right? So I think purchasing a property is something I'm in favor of. TIF properties, a TIF I'm in favor of. Let's see what we can do. Understanding that we need to put investment in the time with IDOT, but we have to start somewhere. And then also really appreciate that Jenna and Jim brought up North Avenue as well, because the old IHOP building that's sitting up there, that's pretty bad. I think that's pretty bad. So we're never ending. Opportunities for investment. We are not landlocked. Okay.
Just wanted to echo one thing, and it's just reinforcing what I said previously, because what Manager Jackson said about the clear definition, right? I think that you're never going to hear me arguing for zoning, but in this case, I'm going to argue for that clear definition being encoded in the zoning, so that staff and the community knows exactly what we're trying to accomplish with Roosevelt Road. So I just wanted to re-echo that because of Manager Jackson's comments about that clear intentional direction and being able to move on it without having to question.
All right. Thank you. Then I think we need to take the roll on this, because we are actually adopting it then, right? Clerk Waters, would you please take the roll?
Trustee Enya?
Yes.
Trustee Eater?
Yes.
Trustee Loving-Jacobson?
Yes.
Trustee Straw?
Yes.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
Trustee Wesley?
Yes.
And President Skaman.
Yes, thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you.
So lastly, we do have a discussion and potential adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 15, Article 3, Section 15-3-18 to establish time limits and idle fees for public EV charging stations. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Trustee Straw, second by Trustee Eater. Village Manager Jackson.
Yes, President Skaman, trustee members. Really quickly, so this is an item related to idling fees. Initially we considered making this a consent item, but we felt like it was important because it's a little new and different that we have a conversation about it. So we can give a quick overview and then turn it back over to you, Craig.
So, thank you, Manager Jackson. This item is a discussion of potential adoption of an ordinance amending the village code to establish time limits and set fees for overuse of public charging stations. The purpose of these charging stations is to provide opportunities to owners of electric vehicles to charge their vehicles while shopping, working, or dining in the village. The proposed ordinance is intended to ensure those charging stations remain available for multiple users. Marlon Jackson, our Parking and Mobility Services Manager, will provide you an overview of what we're proposing based on the research and some of the justification that we found for the need for these.
Good evening, President Skaman, trustees. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come up to discuss this. So just to talk about the usage of the EV charging stations, what we've identified with looking into reporting systems is that we have vehicles that are charging, but they're staying longer than that duration. And what we see is that there's about 50% of higher usage during the duration stay.
What that means is basically a vehicle will park, they'll charge up. They may be done after 2 hours to 3 hours, but we see that they're consistently on that charger for about 7 to 8 hours on average. So what we're looking at, high overview, is that we want to propose introducing a 3-hour time limit, which should give sufficient amount of time for someone to be able to come, charge, enjoy, the village area, shopping, dining, and then be able to, take off from there. On top of that, we're looking at adding a 30-minute grace period from that final charge time, just to give the constituent time to get to that vehicle before we start to charge a 25-cent per minute fee for idling on the station. Essentially, we're looking to make sure that all parkers, all EV users have the ability to utilize the charging station equitably. And that's pretty much it. We're not looking to generate any revenue. We're looking to pretty much control the usage of those stations, utilizing innovation being those charging stations instead of enforcement. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
I'm looking to generate revenue. How far? How high can we go? And I know that we're just talking about the idle fees here, but when this came before the board initially, I was an advocate of charging a lot more than what we're charging for, just the charging as well. So I'd like to see us revisit that, but germane to this particular conversation, 25 cents seems light.
To answer that, I think we took the stance of remaining equitable to the constituents that we have here in Oak Park. Right now, I can tell you that looking at a lot of different areas like Evanston, they're charging $1 per minute. And speaking to some of the staff out there, I've heard that there's been times where cars were parked for almost 48 hours. It's an astronomical bill, and a lot of people were coming in and upset about that. Obviously, we're looking to control what's going on right now, and I think that's something that we could start with this and revisit a higher fee if necessary, or we can start off with a higher fee if that's what the board realizes.
Yeah, if Evanston's doing $1, we should do $1.
You want some more public comments, Corey?
Yes. I mean, move your car, right? I mean,
Did you say $1 a minute?
$1 a minute.
Yeah.
That's insanity.
What I can say too is, in talking to Evanston, they did mention that at the beginning of this, when they instituted it, first 3 months, very astronomical charges. It started to die down into the 6-month mark, and then it completely went away by 12 months.
See, there you go, $1 a minute.
Okay, Brian.
So I do not want to go to $1 a minute. I would not be in favor of that. And are we able to, with the ChargePoint chargers, have hours during which we don't do these idle fees? For instance, between, say, 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. So if someone, lives nearby and they're charging overnight, so long as they move their car before 7 a.m., they're not going to start getting idle fees. They can charge overnight. They can move their car within the lot and not accrue idle fees, because I think that's a reasonable use case for these chargers for someone who lives in an apartment a block away from one of our garages. They have a monthly permit in the garage. We would want them to be able to charge and not be limited to 3-hour windows.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. The system does have capability of doing that, but what we did talk about in the ordinance language is that we wouldn't charge permit holders any idle fees to give them the opportunity to park those overnight hours.
So permit holders, I saw that. Does that include people who, I guess when I was thinking permit holders, I was thinking people who like have permits for our surface lots. That also applies if you like are a monthly parker at like the Avenue Garage.
Correct. Those are considered permit holders as well.
Okay. That makes sense. And then I think I will say I would be willing to consider higher than 25 cents per minute if we have a cap. I'm thinking the idea of this idle fee is to replace, as you note, citations, having to go out and put a ticket on a window for someone who stays too long. And if that's the case, if our ticket for parking beyond a 3-hour limit would normally be $50, then like I'd be fine with going $1 a minute if it's capped at $50. So if you stay 2 hours and stay 2 hours too long, you're not going to end up with $120 fee, because as you note, someone who didn't really understand what they were signing up for and parked there overnight, was plugged in overnight. They're not a permit holder. They're someone who's staying with a friend nearby. Now they're coming out to $1,000 bill.
Thank you for bringing that up. So the system does have the capability to put a cap on it. Currently, the cap that comes when you sign up for a charge point is $100. We currently have that instituted, but we absolutely can adjust that to $50. $33 is currently the amount that we would charge for overtime parking for 3 hours. But if someone were to, park, remove the charger, and leave their vehicle there, our enforcement team would then have to come and issue a citation if they're in the area.
Right. I think it makes sense to align it with whatever the current provision is for people who are parked illegally in a village parking spot. Whatever the parking ticket for that is, you pay for an hour of parking downtown. You stay over that. I think we should cap the overage fee at that, and that I think reasonably aligns it with the purpose of both of those things, which is you want to turn vehicles over in those parking spots.
So if you get the parking citation after 3 hours, it's $33. If you charge the 25 cents per minute, it's basically $15 an hour. So if you leave it at 25 cents, 2 hours worth is, $30.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying
Yeah.
a cap is.
So would the cap come if you're 1 minute into that time, or do they just accrue up to $50 worth?
They accrue up to whatever the cap is that aligns it with with the commensurate parking citation. Okay. Was my
so
thought.
3 hours after would be about $45. So they could sit there for 6 hours. But I don't know if we want them to do that just to get to that $50. But
as I said, I would be okay with us increasing beyond the 25 cents, so long as we were looking at
that would shorten the time frame
at a cap, because I think for me the concern with Trustee Wesley's interest in going to $1 a minute it is you could very easily have someone who they parked there, went to a friend's apartment, come back, in the morning and they're hit with hundreds and hundreds of dollars in fees if we're talking $1 a minute.
If I can add, the charge point system does notify multiple times each additional charge. So if once somebody hits the 3-hour limit or their vehicle is done charging, it notifies them. It'll notify them that they have a 30-minute grace period to remove their vehicle. Once that 30-minute grace period hits, then the time starts ticking. So if we're at $1 a minute, they're going to get, every time they hit a charge, it's going to text their phone.
Yeah, I mean, 10 texts in 10 minutes might make you get out of bed.
And then thinking about the last thing I just wanted to put out there is, with a $33 cap, depending on whatever amount we charge, if we go $1, we're at 30 minutes, and then that person's at the ticket time, and we're the data is showing that we're averaging 6 to 8 hours of people sitting on the charger after being charged. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. I can go if it's.
You have all the answers, right?
I mean, I think I'm generally, I'm fine with 25 cents. I think, here's the thing, I guess, tell me if this assumption is correct. So if we know anything about the demographics of the people charging, I assume it's maybe people from out of town or it's renters, right? Because if you have a home, then you probably have a place to park it and you're probably charging at home and you're probably not really taking advantage of this system. Do we have any sense? Is that right? That it's mostly renters and maybe folks visiting from out of town using?
Based off of the stations that are having the extra idle times, I would definitely agree with that assumption.
Okay. I mean, I think I just ultimately don't want to be penalizing renters more than homeowners. And so if that's why ultimately, that's sort of my initial thought and reaction to the extreme, like quadrupling the per minute fee. I think I'm not really interested in that. There's also an economics of once you hit that cap, you're just, I'm going to stay, right? Like once you hit that, I care less about generating revenue from this because it's not that big. We talked about this a month or so ago around it's not a really great source of revenue for the sustainability fund. We'd have to jack those rates up pretty high for it to be worth, generating something substantial. So for me, it's about behavior, change and incentivizing that. So have you thought about is this cap actually going to, at some point you're just saying, you can park here for this additional fee for as long as you want now because you're capped, right? So is there a reason to potentially look at the economics and think about extending the cap as well to try to incentivize the right behavior?
I definitely agree with that. I think once we implement the system, that's something that we can, look at, find out exactly where the behaviors change.
Yeah.
So that we can identify the demographics that we need to, change that with.
Yeah, okay. Is changing the cap in the code going to do that without a board action? If you decide it's $100, $200, is that something you can change without having to come back here? I'm just trying to be efficient and not have to
I think if it's codified in the code, we'd have to come back.
Okay, you would have to come back. All right. Well, I'm happy to take the recommendation that you think is the most effective at behavior change. That's what I care about here. The only other question I had is, have we looked at what other municipalities or even private chargers are doing? What is the fee they charge for idling? And are we in line with that?
Yes. I ran a few, and I wrote these comps down just to let you know. So River Forest has a $10 an hour idle fee, which we are coming in more than that. Evanston is at the highest, as well as, Chicago has a few different chargers that they're charging about $1 a minute idle fee, just depending on the location of those chargers. And then even I've got Lombard, $10 an hour idle fee. Even the Park District, I know they don't charge for their machines right now, but they do have a 20 cents idle fee if you're plugged into the charger and not charging.
Okay, it's just 20 cents per minute. Is that
20 cents per minute?
Did you say $10 an hour?
$10 an hour, yes.
Okay.
That's less than what ours would be.
Yeah, 25 cents is $15.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
So we're in the middle. We're not the lowest, we're not the highest, right? But we're in the middle. Yeah, I'm fine with the staff recommendation on that. So that's where I'm at.
Jenna?
I don't have that much to add. I'm also comfortable with what staff thinks will most incentivize people to move their cars when they're done charging so other people can use them. My only question is, are we seeing an increase in the idling? I mean, I'm kind of making that presumption as more people adopt electric vehicles.
I think the purpose with this would be just being more proactive than reactive, because I know with the village board goals, we're looking at, mobility and different, sustainability, transportation, and access to EV. So with more adoption of EV vehicles coming into the area, we'll be ready for that transition so that people will be able to access those EV stations as needed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess maybe we just also need to think about expanding our offering of chargers as well. Not that I want to let more people idle, but just if there's more of a demand, that we're accommodating that so that, that's not a barrier to, or, as people consider switching to EVs, that's not a consideration that would, prevent them from doing so. But otherwise, yeah, thank you. I think this is fine. I'm happy to support this change.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm comfortable with the staff's recommendation. I do think if you don't see behavior change in 6 months or so, I hope you'll come back to us with some additional recommendations. I do agree that we need more EV chargers, but maybe that's, yeah. And go ahead.
So I heard in the ordinance, so the permit users are exempt from the idle charges. Do they pay more for the convenience of using EV chargers and being exempt?
They don't pay more. When you say do they pay more, you mean the per kilowatt?
Just in general, like, do they pay more for their parking permit, or do they pay more for charging or anything like that? Or do they just get do they buy a parking permit and then they just get like grandfathered in with the additional benefits that come with that?
Got it. Yeah. So they do pay for a permit on a quarterly basis. When staff looked at this evaluation, we thought about the thought process of if a person lives in the area, in that building, they're paying for a permit to give them the opportunity to charge their vehicles where someone else has the charger at home. So that's why we wanted to look at omitting that. Now, as we look at the next 6 months, if we find out we see a change in the idling behavior, but we notice that the idlers are the people that are living in the building, charging longer than what they should, that's something that we can come back to the board to discuss if we need to revamp that.
Gotcha. Okay, appreciate that. Just like to reiterate from my comments previous when we brought this thing, I'd like to run a for-profit charging utility and not a break-even charging utility. I think that, it doesn't have to be egregiously profitable, but, more than $25,000 a year would be great.
I think we can continue to look at that down the road. I think it's an opportunity right now to encourage people to buy EV cars. They're not seeing the incentives from the federal government, but you are seeing great incentives from car dealerships, and the price of gas is super high. So maybe we can just encourage for a little bit and keep this still somewhat affordable, and review this again in another 6 to 9 months. Okay. Yeah, because it's not really a revenue. But, $33 a day, if you're a regular idle person, will still add up real quick.
I think we didn't agree to any cap, so we're not talking $33 a day. We're still talking $15 an hour as long as you're plugged in.
Okay.
I was the only one who said yay to cap.
Right. Are we interested in a cap? I think I'm still comfortable just to see if it changes behavior, but I think it's a very thoughtful recommendation.
I guess the one thing I would say is I do view it as a little bit of an equity issue, because the people who are using a public charger are people who are not charging in their own garage. I don't use the public chargers because Jim is an exception. I don't use the public chargers because I can fully charge my EV at home overnight, and it's cheaper than charging on a public charger. I think if we did a study on the issue, the vast majority of people who are using public chargers to charge their EVs are probably people who don't have access to a charger at home, because charging at home is actually just more convenient. So I'm concerned that any additional fees we're using, I think it is appropriate to have an idle fee, because it is appropriate to want to turn the spots over. But I think that putting a cap on the idle fee is a reasonable concession, given what I think, my educated guess regarding who this is a fee on, is that we're not talking about primarily the more affluent residents of Oak Park. I mean, you have to be somewhat affluent to have an EV, but EVs are becoming a whole lot cheaper than they once were, especially EVs purchased in the used market. You can get them for
That's
between 10 and 20,000. So we're not talking necessarily what we were talking about when we were, if we had considered this 5 years ago.
Right, okay. So, however, recognizing that we don't have enough stations, the idling is also affecting somebody else who might be in that same situation and can't gain access because of. So we do need to change behavior. Can we very briefly figure out whether we have a will of the board to go with their $33 or even Bill Treasurer Jackson?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if the will of the board is to try to create a cap, maybe the staff has an idea around, an alternative idea around the cap that speaks to Trustee Eater's point around just the
Changing behavior?
change behavior.
Well, $33 is the cost of a ticket, right? And once you get a ticket for anything else, you get one ticket. They don't keep giving you more tickets until the next day. So I think, is that somewhat where the $33 came from in your mind?
That was my thinking, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear it.
If I can, I'm sorry. If I can, I think a fair amount for the cap would be $50. The reason being is that we're giving the person 3.5 hours to charge. Then the idling starts. So if we're looking at $15 an hour, we're right at $60 when we hit 4 more hours, which puts us in the range of the 7 to 8 hours that we're having the issue with for the idling time. That would be my recommendation.
I'm cool with that. Okay.
I just want to mention one last thing, and that is that we have a lot of new people that would be coming into the garage that were staying at the Holiday Inn. And so I'd be a little bit concerned about leaving a bad taste in all these visitors' mouths that they have a big ticket they don't know about. But I understand the points being made. And I think you will change the behavior quickly, as you suggested.
Well, we would just hope that the desk at the lobby of the hotel would inform folks, and I think we need better signages for the hotel. Yeah, okay. It's like this little square blue sign about this big right now that didn't, okay, that's forthcoming? Gotcha. Okay, so then I would need a friendly amendment to the motion on the table to add the $50 cap for.
I would move to amend the motion on the table to add a $50 cap to the idling charges.
Second.
Clerk Waters, would you please take the roll?
Trustee Straw,
Yes.
Trustee Eater,
Yes.
Trustee Enya is absent. Trustee Levin Jacobson,
Yes.
Trustee Taglia,
Yes.
Trustee Wesley,
Sure.
President Skaman.
Yes, we all know that Trustee Wesley is willing to charge more, you know, so to be continued. Call to board and clerk. Clerk Waters, would you like to start us off?
Pass.
Trustee Straw?
Pass.
So I'm just going to say one thing here is that, last time we were here, maybe the meeting before the last time we were here, whatever, when we talked about the sustainability fund, right, we talked about increasing the reusable bag fee on folks who are very much cannot afford an EV. And now we're talking about an equity issue for folks who are leaving their EV at our public charging station. I don't see, these two things to me are completely different. There was a significant amount of board support for one of those, and then also a significant amount of board support for these with equity as the issue, as the argument for both. I don't find them to be equivalent.
I just want to wish a happy birthday to my oldest daughter. Tonight is her 27th birthday, and sorry I couldn't be there, but duty calls, so
Proud of you, I'm sure.
I'll have to make it up. So anyway, happy birthday, Ginny. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to say, happy Earth Day Eve. Is that what Lindsay said? And slash
get outta here
week,
soon.
slash month. I just want to thank all the people who really have continued to make Oak Park be a leader in climate action, including my colleagues on the board, Oak Park Climate Action Network, village staff, the Environment and Energy Commission. By the way, congrats to Darryl Baker, who's now the new chair of the EEC, and many other people. We've done a lot for sustainability in this village just in the last few years. We've established a nation-leading climate action plan known as CROP, which we referenced tonight. We've established a building benchmarking program. We've passed a nation-leading electrification ordinance. We've passed and funded a comprehensive bike plan. We've launched the Oak Park Energy Navigators, which I hear is already very popular. I've heard several hundred people have signed up to participate in that program already. We have the Oak Park Climate Action Network climate coaches that have been around for 2 years now. We have the Energy Efficiency Grant Program, which we just increased the amounts for. We've set up rebates for appliances like induction stoves and heat pumps. We have reduced or / eliminated permit fees for electric home upgrades. And then we are, the energy loan program is also coming soon for loans up to 10K, and maybe more. And we plus a number of other programs like the rainscapes and the sewer backup protection, and the tree giveaways. So that's just the things I could list ahead of this meeting. And we've done a lot. So kudos to us. And thank you all for your support in this. Thank you.
All right, Jenna?
Yeah, it basically already is Earth Day, so happy Earth Day at 11 o'clock. I just wanted to give a shout out and gratitude to Kelly and Cassandra and everybody who was involved in organizing the Arab American Heritage celebration on Saturday. It was so much fun. It was wonderful. I could tell how hard folks worked on that, and so thank you, and I appreciate that effort very much.
Thank you. Clerk Waters?
Sorry, thanks. I was going to pass because I thought maybe everyone else would pass since it was so late, but I will go ahead and say my piece. I just really want to give a congratulations to Jimmy Crushfield III. He's a junior at Oak Park and River Forest High School. He is being named to the 2026 U19 men's national team. So just want to let him know that we are proud of him and cheering him on as he represents Team USA on the international stage. I also want to take a moment to recognize a few important observances that together reflect who we are as a community. Last week, we recognized Black Maternal Health Week and the Week of the Young Child. And this week, we honor Volunteer Appreciation Week. These aren't separate moments. They're all about how we care for people. During Black Maternal Health Week, we were reminded of the urgent need to listen to and protect Black women and families. On April 15th, the Black Maternal Health Collaborative gathered to center truth, connection, and prenatal wellness. Because awareness alone isn't enough. Change is the goal. At the same time, the Week of the Young Child calls us to invest in our youngest residents. I want to uplift the Collaboration for Early Childhood for their leadership in supporting children and families across our community. And this week, during Volunteer Appreciation Week, we recognize the people who consistently show up. We saw that on April 4th at our community cleanup, and again on April 12th with our Girl Scouts, small moments that reflect a strong community. And we continue that momentum with our upcoming Civics Festival, Democracy in Action, where Monica Gordon, Cook County Clerk, will lead a conversation on elections. Because participation matters. So whether it's supporting maternal health, investing in our children, volunteering, or engaging in our democracy, this is the work. And to everyone who continues to show up, just want to say thank you. We are better because of you. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so I was just looking, I was remembering that the township has taxi coupons, books that you can purchase for $6, and then it's a discounted taxi ride. Now, that's the kind of program that for a very small amount, I think we could invest and make that available for more than just seniors. And they also have reduced 50% discount on RTA transit permits. But of course, if they're not meeting our route needs, then, you know, that's a challenge. But I do think that there are opportunities for strengthening programs that already exist to expand who they serve. And I am also proud, I want to mention that my son will be at Gwendolyn Brooks for the civic stuff. I can't tell everybody what the cool stuff he's going to do. He works at Argonne because, you know, then he'd get mad at me, but he's going to do some cool stuff. So it's a whole family affair. And yeah, the Arab American Fest was super fun. If you missed it, I was making a fool of myself dancing. Yes, you did. I tried to get Jenna out there, but she wouldn't budge. So, but I know.
Hey! It was really fun.
All right. But I know Jenna's a good dancer. So, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Second or third or something.